Yeah, we do have counsel, but we'll have to. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We'll go ahead and get started here. Welcome to the monthly meeting of the City of Des Moines Zoning Board of Adjustment. This board has the power under Iowa law and the zoning ordinance of the City of Des Moines to hear and make decisions on requests for variances and exceptions from the regulations in the zoning ordinance, to review conditional use permit requests, and to consider appeals from any decision of city staff in the administration of the zoning ordinance. The members of this board are citizens of the City of Des Moines and have been appointed to this board by the City Council. The board members are volunteers and they receive no compensation for their public service. And I serve with 7 great folks. They're all here today, so I'll take a moment to introduce them to each of them. On the audience's right is Tom DeCio. Next to him is Dave Gare. Next to Dave is Rhonda Cedillo. On the audience's left is Nathan Blake. Next to him is Justin Gross. And next to him is Marlis Jones. I'm Mel Pins, the board chair. I will introduce some of the city staff that are assisting today. First of all, the city's legal counsel for the Board of Adjustment. To my right is Lisa Whelan. Welcome. I'll introduce staff that will be presenting today. Frank Dunn-Young, city senior planner. Catherine Drehas, city planner. Bert Dross, the deputy planning administrator. Sarah Hutchinson, city planner. And Eric Lundy, zoning enforcement officer. Our meeting moderator, all of the magical AV stuff here, is Tyler Hall. I'll go ahead and cover the meeting's procedure. For some of you, this may be the first time you're in front of us. You may hope it's the only time you're in front of us. But we'd like to give everybody a welcome here. We'll take you through this, so don't worry or have anxiety about how the process works. We'll help everybody through that. But I'll give you a little background here. First and foremost, the Zoning Board of Adjustment is a quasi-legal board. This hearing will be conducted within the legal procedures and format as authorized by Iowa law and this city's ordinances. This meeting is open to the public, but the meeting is being recorded by both audio and video for a legal record of these proceedings. The board members have each received a copy of the agenda and the staff recommendations. The board is required to base its decision on each item upon the criteria established by law for the type of relief sought by the applicant. The law applicable to each case has been identified in the written staff report. If the facts, as determined by this board, demonstrates that the criteria established by law for granting the relief has been satisfied, then the board must grant the relief. Otherwise, the board must deny the requested relief. Each item will be announced in the order that it appears on the agenda. Items listed on the first portion of the agenda, called the consent agenda, are not planned to be individually discussed. In fact, they will be considered for approval in accordance with the recommendation in the staff report, unless the appellant or a member of this audience or the board does not agree with the conditions recommended by staff. If a board member requests the item be removed from the consent agenda, there will then be a full discussion on the matter. And I'll come back to the consent agenda here in a minute to help you through that. For the regular portion of the agenda, after an item has been announced, city staff will first give an overview of the appeal and present any written comments that have been received prior to the hearing. Then the applicant or their representative will be allowed up to 10 minutes to present their appeal. We'll then move to the public comment portion of the hearing for the item at hand. Anyone wanting to speak in support of, in opposition to, or even in neutrality of an appeal will be allowed up to 5 minutes each to provide their comments. This will be their one and only opportunity to address the board in regard to that item. Once all concerned citizens have spoken, the board will then ask any additional questions of city staff, and finally, the applicant will be given 3 more minutes for rebuttal or other closing comments if they so desire. All speakers must speak only from the podium here at the center of the room there by the microphone and begin their presentation by first giving both their name and address of business or residence as applicable to the case. In the event you may need to be contacted for legal notices related to the outcome of this appeal. All speakers are requested to remain courteous and to focus their comments only upon those facts that demonstrate whether or not the criteria established by law for granting the relief has been satisfied. Speakers are also asked to ensure that they're respectful of time considerations, and if necessary, the board chair will limit comments by a speaker if they exceed their time limitation. After all concerned people have spoke, the board will close any further public comment on the agenda item. The board will immediately deliberate the request, and we will make a decision here today on the appeal. Please note that it always takes at least 4 affirmative votes for any zoning appeal to gain approval. If your appeal is approved today, we would ask that you wait until about 1 week from today's hearing. If you'd need to contact the city's Permit and Development Center to obtain any necessary building or sign permits that are related to your appeal. This will allow the decision of this board to be documented in the form of a decision and order, which will be provided to both you and city staff for the record. Any appeal that is approved by this board must be implemented, constructed, or otherwise utilized within 2 years of the date of the decision of this board, or such approvals shall expire. The decisions of this board can only be appealed in the Iowa District Court. If you believe you've been harmed by an error made by this board, your only remedy is to seek relief through the district court within 30 days of the filing of the board's decision and order. If you believe the zoning regulations applied by this board are wrong, you may petition the city council to change those regulations for future considerations. All material written or otherwise used today as part of any presentation is a part of the permanent record. You may contact city staff after the hearing if you need a copy of any of the items presented. And in closing, just a few housekeeping items here. We'd ask that you please avoid any undue conversation in the audience to limit distractions during the hearing. You're doing a fine job. Also, please ensure your cell phone has been silenced. So far, so good. And if you need to use the restroom, you can just leave through the doors here. You don't have to go back downstairs. There are restrooms just past the staircase on your left. Subject to the length of the hearing, we'll take a break at around 3 or 3:30 if needed. And once your agenda item is completed, you're welcome to leave the meeting, or you can maybe stick around and learn a few other things. So we'll go ahead and get to our agenda. We'll have Frank come up here and go over first and foremost if we have any changes to the agenda. So Frank, do we have any changes?
Yes, we have a couple changes. And the first change pertains to item 3. The applicant has requested that the item be withdrawn from the agenda.
Okay. So we're not going to hear that item at all. The applicant has withdrawn that. So if anybody is here with an interest or concern in item 3, we will not hear that case. If they'd want to bring that forward later, they would have to refile an application. Is that correct, Frank?
That is correct.
Okay. Any other changes?
Item 2 has requested a continuance to the June 22nd meeting. There was a mix-up pertaining to the neighborhood meeting, so they're here. They had requested that it be moved to next month. Staff is supportive of that request.
Okay. All right. Is there anybody here that wanted to speak in opposition on item 2? And the only reason I asked is just some minor consideration if we had a room full of people or something, but it looks like we don't have anybody here in opposition to item 2, so board members, it looks like if they talk with the neighborhood, maybe they can be here next month. If there's no concerns about that, would anybody want to make a motion to move item 2 to next month's hearing? Okay. All right, moved by Marlis and a second by Rhonda. All those in favor on item 2 to move that next month's hearing, raise your right hand and say aye. All right, that's 7-0. We'll take that one off the agenda. Okay, so that'll leave items 1, 4 through 7 on consent. So the way consent agenda works, items 1, 4, 5, 6, and 7, staff is recommending approval of the requested uses, exemptions, and other appeals, subject to the staff recommendations or the conditions that city staff would want to see go with that. So before we would look at approving those in a block, I do want to go through quick. If there's anybody in the audience that has a concern, if they wouldn't want to see those approved, we will open that agenda item up in our regular hearing and have a full discussion. So I'm going to just read through them one by one. And is there anybody here in the audience that would be opposed to granting a conditional use related to Holt Sales and Service at 2500 Dean Avenue? That's item 1. Would anybody be opposed to granting that requested conditional use? If you'd be opposed to that, just raise your hand for the moment. Okay, seeing none. Anybody here that would have a concern related to item 4, 2510 Ingersoll, a zoning exception request related to installation of some signs? Anybody opposed to granting that requested relief in item 4? Just raise your hand. Seeing none. Item 5 is a type 2 zoning exception at 6128 Willowmere Drive, primarily related to signage. Anybody opposed to granting the appeals requested there for item 5? Just raise your hand. Okay, seeing none. Item 6 is a conditional use permit request at 5801 Franklin Avenue related to what appears to be a food prep and catering business. Would there be anybody opposed to granting a conditional use for that for item 6? If so, just raise your hand. All right, seeing none. Item 7 would be a temporary use request at 1636th Avenue related to an outdoor event on a monthly basis as determined. Anybody opposed to granting that temporary use for item 7? Just raise your hand. Okay, seeing none. Board members, if anybody has any concerns on items 1, 4, 5, 6, or 7, we could hear those as the regular agenda. If there are none, would there be a motion to grant approvals for the consent agenda? All right, motion by Marlis, a second by Tom. All those in favor for approval of items 1 and 4 through 7, raise your right hand, say aye. All right, motion carries. So if you were here for item 1, 4, 5, 6, or 7, those have been approved subject to staff recommendations. You'll get a copy of the decision in order about this time next week. So thank you for coming down, and that was the easy lifting. Okay, we'll move to the regular portion of our hearing. We'll start with item 8. It's a conditional use permit request at 1623 6th Avenue, and we'll have Frank give us the background on this requested use.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the board. Item 8 was continued from the April 27th board meeting. The proposal is a sale of wine and beer by an existing 9,972 square foot limited retail establishment. As a limited retail establishment, no more than 40% of gross receipts from sales on the premises may be derived from the sale of wine, beer, and tobacco products. The applicant is not seeking liquor sales. In order to be able to sell alcohol, they have to obtain a conditional use permit for a retail sales limited use selling wine and beer for off-premise consumption in the MX1 district. As you can see, here is the property outlined in yellow, and it is along the 6th Avenue corridor, 1623 6th Avenue is the address. Across the street, you have a mix of commercial, and then you have some commercial that extends further south, and then some residential that extends to the north. Here is an aerial shot of the premises. Here is a parking lot view. Another parking lot view. And here is the layout for the store. Given the size of the retail establishment, I'll go ahead and zoom in on this a little bit so you can maybe see this a little bit better. Given the size, that the alcohol sales component seems to be fairly small. They're showing 4.5 square feet for the wine area, 12 square feet for the beer. And staff is recommending approval with the typical conditions. Those conditions being any beer selling wine and beer shall operate in accordance with the beer and wine permit obtained through the office of the city clerk as approved by city council. Any sale of wine or beer for off-premise consumption shall be in accordance with all state and local laws or ordinances. Any beer, wine, or beer shall comply with Article 4 of Chapter 42 of the City Code for noise control. And then any business selling wine or beer shall conspicuously post 24-hour contact information for manager or owner of the business near the main public entrance. Any business selling wine or beer shall institute a strict no loitering policy, conspicuously post one or more loitering signs, and cooperate with police in addressing loitering on the premises. Any business selling wine or beer shall not dispense alcoholic beverages from a drive-through window. Litter and trash receptacles shall be located at convenient locations inside and outside the premises, and operators of the business shall remove trash and debris from premises and adjoining public areas on a daily basis. Any renovation of the building shall be in compliance with applicable building and fire codes with issuance of necessary permits by the city's Permit Development Center. The zoning enforcement officer, if they determine at any time the operation of the business is a nuisance or exhibits a pattern of violating the conditions set forth in the conditional use, the zoning enforcement officer may apply to bring it back to the board for reconsideration of issuance of that conditional use. Here is a consent map. With those in support in green, those in opposition in red. Here are comment cards for in favor of the request. Here are comment cards in opposition to the request.
Frank, is that the official neighborhood association response there? I noticed someone wrote that.
We do have an official response coming up. And this is, once again, the not in favor of the request. And so here is the Riverbend response. Zoom up I'll zoom in a little bit. And some of these responses are going to be a little bit lengthy. I do believe that there's representatives from some, if not all of the, some of the parties that submitted the letter. So I'll ask that they speak relative to these letters as well. And if I need to go back or slow down, please let me know.
Frank, thank you for your good job in scrolling that letter. You would do well on the cue cards on Saturday Night Live.
All right. Here's a letter from the 6th Avenue corridor. And there's a letter.
Got one more here?
Yep, from a neighbor.
Okay.
And the neighborhood summary, there are two neighborhood summaries.
What does that mean? Oh, a summary of the meetings that were had?
Summary of the neighborhood meetings. So
Okay.
these are provided on, by the appellant.
Okay.
And so these are rather lengthy, so I'm inclined to ask the appellant to explain these when they come up. That neighborhood meeting actually occurred prior to the April meeting. And this, as a result of requesting to be continued to this meeting, there was a supplemental meeting that occurred afterwards with neighbors as well. And that is what is in the supplemental letter.
Can you go back a little bit there? Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Frank.
And they have signed a document relative to sign prohibiting trespassing and authorization to the Des Moines Police Department. And
Yeah.
questions?
Yeah. Got questions for Frank from the board? Justin?
Frank, I know one, yeah, right there. If you could leave it there for a second. So here, they're suggesting that this is the amount of space they're going to use for wine and beer, correct?
Mm-hmm.
But there's nothing that really keeps them from expanding that to half their store. Is that correct?
I believe, that is correct. I think one of the restrictions with the conditional use is that no more than 40% of
The
their
sales.
sales receipts can be derived from.
So just the sales, but it could expand this amount to most of the store if they wanted to, correct?
Could, yes.
Okay, thank you.
A related question to that, so yes, generally speaking, they could have up to 40% sales if we approve this, but if somebody presents design criteria to us, we could say, hey, we want to limit you to what you have presented to us for your available either, facing or square footage. I think in the past we've done that. We've had other folks that said, gee, I just want to have one 8-foot case of beer or wine. We said, okay, since that's what you've asked for, that's as much rope as we're going to give you to run with. So there is the potential we could say, this is what you've asked for, so this is all you're going to get. Just generally speaking. Other questions for staff? Frank, I've got a couple. Maybe this might stimulate a few other questions. So I'm generally familiar with the 6th Avenue corridor. I know where this building is located. It's been here some time, but I'm not too familiar with actually the retail history here. I get the impression, is there an operating Family Dollar store there now?
There is.
How long has that, and I can ask the applicant, but has it been there a few years under current operation?
It's been there for a few years. I cannot tell you.
Okay. And prior to that, I'm assuming it was also a retail store of some type for a number of years?
Yep, I believe it was a local type of a grocery store.
Right, okay. All right, so we've had general merchandising, retail stuff currently going on there and has in the past. Would they need to do any site plan changes here with this conditional use permit request, or do they meet current zoning and site plan requirements?
This request would not require them to alter their site in any way.
Okay. To a certain degree, we have limitations on some of the things we can request and require, but I do know that litter, just from packaging, of moving stuff in and out, staff tries to put recyclables in a different container. They have their own packaging they got to throw away, plus customers. And a lot of times with these retail stores, I'm not going to name any names here at the hearing, but just about any store or brand name, I've been annoyed too, where it seems like trash blows around. The best thing to help with that is screened dumpster enclosures. Do they have screened enclosures at this time? Do you know?
I thought that they do. Let me see if we can see it in an aerial.
Yeah, I'm guessing some of that might be hidden a little. Couldn't, okay.
Yes.
Yep, okay, all right. That still takes some management, of course, to keep doors shut and lids on things, but just curious on there.
And to pick up things that blow around, yes.
Right. If they were not proposing the incorporation of the alcohol sales, there would be nothing for this board to be reviewing today. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So whether or not they had too much litter or too much loitering to date, that wouldn't be anything for this board to be reviewing.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Okay. Seeing none. All right. Thank you, Frank, for leading us off here. So we'll move to the second part of this agenda item, which is a presentation by the applicant themselves. Whoever their representative may be, step up to the podium. We first need your name and address, and then you've got up to 10 minutes to present your reasoning for your conditional use permit request.
Good afternoon, chairpersons of the board. My name is Joshua File. I am an attorney from Whitfield and Eddy here in Des Moines. My address is 699 Walnut Street, Suite 2000, Des Moines, 50309. At the outset, I just want to clarify something that was said in the introduction. The initial neighborhood meeting was held in April. There has not been a subsequent official meeting. So I just want to make that clear before I begin. There is an enclosed, screened dumpster area on the property. As far as how long has Family Dollar been at the property, they are in the first term of their lease. And I do not believe there would be any objection to a condition limiting the area of the beer and wine to what was shown on our application. Our office represents Family Dollar in connection with its application for a conditional use permit for limited beer and wine sales at the 1623 6th Avenue location. Our application for Family Dollar's application demonstrates that it meets the criteria for this type of CUP. To summarize, the premises are at least 150 feet from all places of worship, parks, schools, and licensed child care facilities. As shown in the introductory comments, the proposed or planned sections of the store for beer and wine sales are very limited. While the cap for gross receipts on beer and wine sales is 40%, anecdotally, other Family Dollar locations within the state of Iowa, outside the city of Des Moines, at those locations, sales of beer and wine represent less than 2% of gross receipts, far below the 40% threshold. The CUP is in harmony with the character of the surrounding area. As zoning is mixed MX1, there are mixed commercial and residential uses in this area. The site premises are screened from neighboring properties by fence and by natural landscaping. As was indicated in the introductory comments, no structural changes to the building or site are contemplated. Sales at this store of beer and wine are anticipated to supplement existing sales. The existing customer base of Family Dollar is not anticipated or planned to try to increase traffic in the area, but rather to supplement what its existing customer base is already purchasing. As such, Family Dollar does not anticipate any measurable increase in traffic in and around the store. Of primary concern for the neighborhood association, and also as a criteria of the CUP, the granting of the CUP will not constitute a nuisance. Sales are intended for off-premises consumption. There is no patio for on-premises consumption. There are no plans to add speakers or design any sort of gathering place for people to consume alcohol on site. There's not even a drive-through location window at this location. Third-party vendors will come in to provide additional training for staff at Family Dollar on alcohol sales. Staff are required to perform hourly cleaning checks, empty trash receptacles, and empty trash at the screened dumpster on site. The open parking area is covered by cameras, and there are approximately 10 exterior lights that light the parking lot. Family Dollar has a strict no loitering policy. Any on-site consumption of alcohol would be violative of that policy, and those customers would be considered trespassing. The neighborhood meeting was held back in April, prior to the April Board of Adjustment meeting. The specific concerns raised in the neighborhood meeting, and from what I was able to see in the letters provided to the zoning board, identified concerns generally relating to two main categories: the loitering and the littering. As we understood it, and as Family Dollar understood it from the neighborhood meeting, these concerns were primarily prospective. What would happen if this is granted? As indicated previously, these sales of beer and wine are intended to be supplemental. We do not anticipate or expect significant measurable increases of traffic around the store. And as the intended sales are for off-premises consumption, also do not anticipate additional litter from customers at the store. At the meeting, as has previously been indicated in some of the letters that were shown, the neighborhood association expressed the concern that there was not enough time for Family Dollar to address their concerns prior to the April zoning board meeting. Family Dollar agreed to continue to today so that it would have additional time to consider changes that it might make or additions to its application. The supplemental letter that was shown in the introduction summarizes the two changes that Family Dollar has added to its application. Family Dollar was willing to send the no trespass letter requested by neighbors at the original neighborhood meeting. And Family Dollar has or soon will be posting the no trespassing signs at the property. It is committed to working with law enforcement to address violations of the no loitering policy and no trespassing policy. As for 24/7 access for police, Family Dollar cannot control where the city decides to allocate how it decides to allocate its resources or place its cameras, but would be fully supportive of any efforts to provide, or for the city to install cameras giving a view of its parking lot. Together with the other conditions included in the staff report, Family Dollar believes that the concerns of the neighborhood association have been generally addressed. Family Dollar understands that the CUP is subject to revocation if the operation of its building or if its business becomes a nuisance. Given the level of interest of the neighborhood association in this application, Family Dollar is hopeful that the neighborhood will utilize the posted contact information to report and discuss any violations or issues of the property with the regional manager, so that they may be promptly addressed. Otherwise, as provided in the application that was submitted to the city, Family Dollar believes that its application meets the criteria for the CUP for limited sale of wine and beer at this location. Thank you.
All right, questions for Joshua? Stick around, Joshua, sorry.
I apologize.
Nope, that's okay. Since you're the first case, you're the first example, so, questions?
The hours of operation, Matt? 9 to 9. 7 days a
Make
week?
sure your mic's on over there.
7 days a week, yes. I apologize. I do have, I should have introduced Matt as well. We do have the district manager for Family Dollar Stores, Matt Hill, here in attendance as well.
Okay. All right. Tom, do you have a question?
I will in a minute. Keep going.
Okay, so you don't have a question?
Not right now.
Okay. All right. A couple that I've got for you here, Joshua. Does your client have some other locations in the Des Moines area that they operate?
It does.
Okay. And at those other locations, do they sell beer and wine or have conditional use permits?
One of the locations does not have the required 150-foot distance.
So it doesn't?
It does not.
Okay.
And so it does not.
Okay.
At this time.
All right. So do you have any locations that do sell alcohol?
Within the Des Moines area, no.
Okay, all right. Although I'll just speak for myself, we generally don't like to get into bottle sizing, as I call it here, for restrictions, but generally with the areas that are shown for retail sales, what size or types of containers are being proposed for sale here? Are we
My
talking
understanding-
cases, six-packs, or?
My understanding would be similar to what you would find at a similar location within a gas station.
Okay. I mean, because sometimes, hey, I'm traveling, pull into a hotel, I'd like to get a tall boy, take it back to my room. So would you be selling some singles?
I believe so.
Okay, all right. Any other questions anybody's got?
Sure.
Justin?
Josh, thanks for your presentation. One question I had here was, I think I heard you say that your client's willing to allow a city to put cameras in, correct?
Correct.
But I didn't hear you say was that your client's willing to put cameras themselves on their property, is that right?
I apologize. They already do have cameras on site. They do have surveillance cameras. They're just their own personal ones. The neighborhood concern was that police would only be able to get that after an incident. And so the suggestion of police cameras or city cameras was so there would be continued access of the city directly without having to go first to ask Family Dollar for the footage.
Oh.
Family Dollar is, of course, willing to provide its own footage when requested.
Okay.
And to the extent helpful to resolve incidents at the property. I think the concern was more that, from the neighborhood association, was that footage is generally only available after an incident.
Sure.
And doesn't necessarily deter
Gotcha.
things in advance.
Okay.
Whereas if the city were able to have 24/7 surveillance, it could respond immediately.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
So Joshua, statement and question here. Most security cameras are exactly for what you just said. They're so if something happens, you have a record of it.
Mm-hmm.
Therein, most people have security cameras, post a sign up front. They post a sign that says this location under video surveillance. That's a deterrent on its own, correct?
Correct.
But what we cannot do, that's nice you want to invite the city to install cameras, but this board doesn't have the authority to require non-related third parties to be involved in conditions or expenditures to allow you to carry out what you're intending to do. I think the city of Des Moines could put cameras on every business, every street corner, but they only really do that on certain public right-of-ways. I've gotten a red light ticket that way. Be that as it may, I just kind of want to clarify that, I think, unless I'm speaking out of something else like legally here. That's nice that everybody has a concern about having the city place cameras on the property. But I don't think that's within our discussion here today. Unless you would allow that, great. What I am concerned about, and I think this is kind of funny to see now, I see we have the dumpster enclosure. That's very nice. The dumpsters are not in it. Do you see them sitting there? They're right in the middle of the parking lot. So that means easy for dumpster divers to get in, easy for staff to get to put garbage and recycling in, but that's not the intent of what we're after here. So can you explain to me, are the dumpsters still located there today? Do you know? You're welcome to just give a nod. We can't hear you on the record at this time. Okay, all right. Okay, well, those are the only questions I have. Anything else anybody else would have for Joshua?
Well, there's concern even now, in the past, the lot debris, litter in the lot is a problem. What about in the future if it increases? You don't think that beer and liquor sales will increase the litter in the parking lot?
If I understand the question, the sales of wine and beer at the location are anticipated to be very minimal. Family Dollar.
Counselor, I understand that part, and I don't mean to interrupt you like that. But I also have stopped a lot on places on 6th Avenue and other busy streets where they have beer, alcohol sales, food sales. And usually the parking lots are fairly encumbered by debris. Is Family Dollar proposing or going to be willing to make a condition as they keep the lot clean past closing time?
Past closing time, you mean to continue?
Not past 9 o'clock. You close at 9 o'clock. What's going to make people leave the parking lot? Or you keep people from using the parking lot as a place to gather to drink beer?
Well, part of that would be the no trespass letter that is
Okay.
going to be has been provided to the city, and the no trespassing policy, so that if police see that there are people there after business hours, police can address it after hours. During hours, also, Family Dollar has a vested interest, if it gets the CUP, to make sure that the business does not become a nuisance, and would take the steps required to do so.
Thank you.
Joshua, I'd just like to get your comment on something. Staff recommendation is certainly for approval, subject to 9 conditions. But what a conditional use permit means is it's conditional. It's subject to the conditions. So is your client aware that if if the board would be inclined to grant approval subject to these conditions, and there are problems, that the business is not cleaning up the litter, if the business is allowing loitering, if staff observes that, they could bring that back to us and we could take away the ability, right? You understand that, I'm sure.
Correct.
Advise your client accordingly.
Family Dollar understands
Yeah.
that it is subject to revocation.
Right.
And was fully on board with the conditions that are outlined by
Okay.
staff.
Okay. Yep. Okay. All right. Thank you, Joshua. You can sit down for the moment. So the way this next part of the hearing works, anybody who wishes to speak in support of the applicant's request to have the conditional use permit to sell the noted alcohol, they can step up, whoever would like to go first. Anybody in support, we just need your name, address, and you've got up to 5 minutes to provide your comments in support. So going once, going twice. Okay. So there's no comments in support. Anybody in opposition? You can kind of just look amongst yourselves. If somebody wants to step up, great. I would remind everybody we need your name and address first. You've got up to 5 minutes. And if you generally have comments reflective of others, just say, hey, I agree with so-and-so, but we're certainly after your unique comments related to this specific issue. Go ahead, sir.
Mike Baldus, 501 College Avenue. I've been asked to speak because my property is the closest proximity to this property. My backyard is 50 feet from the edge of this property. My quality of life has already deteriorated as a result of Family Dollar moving in. Couple of ways. One is the sound level has increased. People pull in with super subs going. They leave their car going. They leave their audio system going while they go into the store and shop. So that, they did a nice job of putting up a fence and a landscaping buffer. The city required them to do that as they went through the site review process. By the way, the permits have closed about October of 2020. That's how long they've been there. So, not long. The sound still comes over the fence, obviously, and to my second-story windows at night. Now, they do only operate till 9 p.m., so if you were to find your way to giving them this thing, I would ask that hours be a definite part of the consideration. Litter, I have lived in this neighborhood for 30 years now, to my amazement. And I spend a good deal of my time picking up other people's litter. I have 30 years of picking up other people's litter. And single-use containers are one of the things that I pick up a lot of. Glass is the worst because they'll throw them down and break it, and then it's a real mess to pick up. So I also want to point out that Family Dollar has a store at 13th and University, and the trash there has been a notorious problem for that area. My son lived in a house that I purchased in that neighborhood, not too far away. He became so annoyed with the trash situation, literally spilling all over out of the container that never got emptied outside the front door, that he went in and asked staff about it. And on two different occasions, he was told by different staff members that that's the landlord's problem. That's what we're told. It's the landlord's problem. So, just FYI, Family Dollar, other stores, management of trash, clearly a problem. So, last one for me personally, I'll let my colleagues here address many of those points that were brought up in those letters, not all of which have been met. But for me, an unintended consequence for Family Dollar of this ask is that it caused me to look into the code more than I previously had, and I see that they are not in compliance of their lighting now. They are definitely guilty of light trespass onto my and the other neighboring properties along College Avenue. They put in high-intensity LED lights on the building that shine directly at our houses. And my neighbor, next-door neighbor, and I both were immediately, as soon as those lights went on and they went into business, we talked to each other about complaining, but our plates were full, and frankly, neither one of us likes to be a complainer. So we just kind of let it go. But they are, we can get an inspector out there, and they'll find that they are definitely in violation of light trespass. So they're going to need to rearrange those lights. And also, while we're talking about lighting, I dread the prospect of them adding more lighting, but I suppose if they actually follow the law in how they put that lighting in, then it won't spill over to adjoining properties in an invasive way. The back part of that parking lot is not properly lit, I don't believe. I don't recall them, I can't promise you this, but I don't recall them adding any extra lighting back there. And it goes back a ways, and it's circled in by fence. It's a great place for criminal activity. So, and yes, and about that dumpster, since they started the business, they've been using the dumpster enclosure for stockpiling cardboard, broken down cardboard, and the dumpster has sat right outside the back door there the entire time. So, and the lids, you can see one of those lids is open now. I pick up that trash too. So, thank you.
Mike, would you be willing to take a question or two here?
Sure.
First of all, you're very commendable, your dedication to living in the neighborhood for many decades and picking up trash. I pick up trash on a street that accesses an apartment building in my neighborhood. That's where we have most of our litter, and yes, there's a lot of weird things you pick up too, by the way. But that takes a lot of dedication from a resident and a neighbor to do that, so thank you.
Yes.
I am curious, with the length of time you lived there, you said so. Family Dollar's been here. I know they said they're in their first term of their lease, but they've been open, what, a year or so? Is that
Yeah,
about
a year
right?
and a half, maybe.
Prior to them being in there, what was the other retailer previous? Did it sit vacant? Can you give me a little, like,
Yes.
the last 5-year history, maybe?
Yeah. I could give you all the history you want to know. The previous tenant was owner of the building, actually, was Tom Bowie. He ran Des Moines Asian and Latino Foods.
Okay.
And he unfortunately got into trouble along the way. The business deteriorated. He lost it to the bank.
Okay.
It sat empty for 2-3 years
Okay.
before the Twan brothers picked it up.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, because I was trying to remember how some of that fit together, because I seem to remember, yeah, there was a business there, then I thought, no, there's not, so.
Yeah.
And what was it originally built for back in the day?
It was built for a super value,
Okay.
yeah, originally.
Yep.
And then, just to give you a little history of the neighborhood, the super value eventually went away due to too much crime. And it sat empty a little bit. It became an Aldi's store for a while.
Right.
And until someone was shot inside the Aldi's, and Aldi's decided that they were going to pull out.
Okay.
And then a good 15 years ago, at least, a couple of young Vietnamese men bought the place and opened up Des Moines Asian Foods. It was not called the extra name at that time,
Right.
just Des Moines Asian Foods. But over time, they suffered enough competition, and the Latino population in the neighborhood grew enough that they started to sell first a little bit of Hispanic foods, and then a little more. And by the end, when Tom had it, it was about half and half.
Cool.
It served the neighborhood well. I was really sorry to see that he ran into financial trouble and didn't make it.
Okay. Excellent history, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right,
Thank
any
you.
other questions for Mike? All right, thank you, sir. All right, anybody else that wishes to speak in opposition? Whoever would like to, step on up. We just need your name, address, and you've got 5 minutes.
Hello, I'm Kathy Hellstern. I'm at 803 Hickman Road, 50314, and I am the president of the Riverbend Neighborhood Association. Thank you very much for your time today and for inviting us to be heard. We appreciate that. We understand that you and your staff make your decisions based on written code, and that we are here to help provide some context and some perspective from a real-world situation. So I'd like to talk to you about the real world in Riverbend as it relates to the criteria that you are considering for this conditional use permit. There isn't time to get to all of them, so I'm going to go quickly and briefly through the highlights. Yes, the business conforms with Table 3.91 of Chapter 134 of the City Code, but in the real world, it sits on a sidewalk where children walk to and from school, where residents wait for the city bus to get to church, where vulnerable neighbors, some of whom are dealing with their own substance abuse issues, pass by as they walk to get exercise, visit our community refrigerator for a much-needed free meal, or even stop in to buy a snack at the store. This business is not an island, and it is accessible to our neighbors who could be harmed by this use. Yes, the subject property is in an area that includes mixed use of commercial and residential uses, but in the real world of Riverbend, we do not believe that after allowing this particular use, there is any way to adequately safeguard the health, safety, and general welfare of our neighbors. In the real world, not only will we see customer traffic increase, but we will also see an increase in dangerous nuisance activities. This property has a lot of space that is not viewable from inside the store, where there is likely to be an increase in vagrancy, public drinking, urination, loitering, soliciting, burglary, vandalism, and panhandling, to name a few. We know this because these nuisance activities are an issue at other properties in the area with the same conditional use. In the real world, these are activities we've been working for years to reduce because they are the antithesis to the health, safety, and general welfare of our neighbors. As to criterion 5, unfortunately, the only way to identify if a business is a nuisance is to let it become one in the real world. We can't predict the future and tell you what will definitely happen on this property. But we can look at the history of the location and see that it already has more law enforcement interactions per square foot than other similar retailers in the area. And that historically, even prior to the existence of this business there, in this location, there has been nuisance activity. We can look at other properties with similar uses permitted to them and see that they deal with increases in nuisance activities. We can tell you that we are already experiencing nuisance issues we are powerless to combat at this point at a business just down the street, and that in the real world, adding alcohol sales does not make a business quieter. We can also tell you that law enforcement in the area does not want to see more alcohol come into our neighborhood. We can't tell you the future, but we can tell you we will be the ones dealing with it. As to further criteria listed for consideration, we do not believe the proposed location of the use adequately safeguards the health, safety, and general welfare of persons residing or working in the area. There are just not enough qualified people on staff to deal with any health, safety, or welfare issues that could arise, and at $11 an hour, they shouldn't have to. Further, since this is an employer in this neighborhood, we should also consider that it will be our neighbors working at this store and having to deal with those increased issues, which now puts them at risk both where they live and where they work. We believe the proposed use will diminish or impair established nearby property values. There will be more traffic, more litter, more nuisance activities. The value of the entire neighborhood will decrease. We do believe that the proposed use will have significant detrimental impact on the use and enjoyment of adjoining properties. Increased traffic, loitering, litter, and other nuisance activities will have a major effect on the entire area, an area we have worked hard to make safe and enjoyable for neighbors of all kinds. We also believe that this detrimental impact will last much longer than the discount store. These kinds of stores go out of business all the time. This new use will stay attached to the property, and we as a neighborhood are back to dealing with these problems on our own, just like we are down the street. Finally, what it comes down to is that so far we have not found Family Dollar to be a good neighbor. We tried to discuss ways to make sure this new use did not become a nuisance use, and we're told that somebody else would have to make the decisions. They don't plan to adequately staff the store or have the proper visibility to deal with loitering or other issues. They aren't concerned about litter in the neighborhood once the cans and bottles leave their store. And through this process, we have learned that we will always have to go through an attorney to address any issues, and so far that has not been helpful or expedient. We have plenty of places to pop in and buy beer and wine, including stores that are members of the community with whom we can dialogue and with whom we have built partnerships when issues have arisen. In the real world, this new use is not necessary for that business. At 2%, that's not a big loss for them, but it's a way huger loss for us. It's not good for that location, it's detrimental to our neighbors and Riverbend, and we believe you have grounds to deny this appeal. Thank you.
Kathy, your timing's impeccable. You had 9 seconds left. Hang on just a second. Do we have any questions for Kathy? All right. Kathy, I appreciate your dedication, your leadership in Riverbend. As a neighborhood president myself, I know that takes a lot of effort.
Doesn't it?
Yes. So yeah, I don't have any questions unless anybody else does. I want to thank you for your comments.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. All right. Is that an alarm over there? Or is it just the squeak? The oil can's behind the rack there, I think. Yeah. There we go. He took care of it. Okay. Anybody else that wishes to speak in opposition, come on up. Again, we just need your name, address, and you've got up to 5 minutes.
Hello, my name's Elizabeth Lewin, and I live in the Riverbend neighborhood at 1307 8th Street. I don't know how much good I'm going to do just affirming and commending what my neighbor Mike and my neighbor Kathy have said, but allowing the sale of beer and alcohol is not in itself a bad thing. There are places across the street, literally, from Family Dollar that sell, beer and wine, and they are not problematic. If you look at the police call records and complaints made of all the different businesses in the neighborhood, the ones that sell beer and alcohol have more frequent nuisance calls and trespassing, crime, public urination calls than places that, don't sell alcohol. But at the same time, the places that do sell alcohol right across the road have fewer calls to the police than the Family Dollar in its current incarnation, not selling beer and alcohol, or beer and wine, rather. They've not been a good neighbor. There have been larger shops and chain stores like Quick Trip and whatnot that are in the neighborhood that at least try to stay in dialogue with the neighborhood association and with the people whose properties border theirs. Pardon me. Their track record so far has not been great, and I don't have high expectations for their future behavior to change dramatically. It's a problematic place. I would like for them to do well in our neighborhood. I would like to have them succeed, but I would also like to see them be a contributing part of our community. We have a fantastic community that is diverse, probably the most diverse zip code in the entire state of Iowa, and we do well with one another and we take care of one another. Whether we are there to make a profit or to make our home, it is distressing to see that the city council, the zoning board, and other people in a position of power would rather defer to the needs of a business that is not a part of our community in terms of its behavior, rather than work with community members who are here for the long haul, who are here picking up the trash and walking the kids to school and operating our businesses so that people within the community have services and needs met and have wages and good jobs, rather than having trash and noise and loitering and people, in vulnerable places at the group home down the street or at the grade school right around the corner. I really beseech you to think carefully before you just go ahead and offer this conditional use permit, because I don't think that permit would be in good hands unless we see a real change of heart and a change in behavior of the current management and legal support that Family Dollar currently has. It's not a good addition to what they already offer, and what they already offer is in need of work for it to be really a vital and useful part of our community. I'll take your questions, but really, I imagine you'll have none.
Hang on just a second. Yeah, questions for Elizabeth from anybody?
I have a question.
Yeah, Justin.
Hi, how are you?
Hey,
You've been in the neighborhood a long time?
since 2002.
Okay. And I think you're referring to across the street, are you talking La Tapatia
La
for?
Tapatia, La Familia, yeah.
Right. And selling alcohol, and there hasn't been any
Yeah.
major issues of what you're talking about. When the Asian food market was there in
Mm-hmm.
that location, do you recall, did they sell alcohol there, beer and alcohol at the time?
I was never in there to buy alcohol. I don't know, Yep. I don't know
Okay.
whether that was something that was available there. I don't remember it being an issue for the neighborhood.
Right. So it sounds like you're more talking about their behavior as a company versus,
Well, that, and you can't entirely control your customer's behavior, but you can create an environment in which certain behaviors are more difficult to do, If you've got a way to see into the parking lot from the cash register, if you've got good lighting and you've got cameras and you've got more than one person working at the store emptying the trash cans, patrolling for, litter in the parking lot, you're not going to have people just hanging out and getting drunk and getting high and having whatever kind of idle fun one has, when one's not discouraged from doing that. You know, you all are city planners, you know a lot about how the way you make the built environment encourages or discourages different kinds of behavior. There isn't any of this, and that, you know, it's not their business necessarily to, you know, spend a lot of time and thought. But here in the neighborhood, it is our time and our thinking trying to create an environment, a built environment that is conducive to a good, healthy, happy lifestyle. And that includes drinking beer and wine. It just does not include buying it, you know, in a tall boy 44-ounce Foster's whatever and, you know, chugging it at the bus stop and leaving the trash there. There needs to be some kind of way to encourage behavior that makes one a better community member. Not just be the business that, you know, sells paper towels and Bud Light down the street.
Any other
Thank you.
questions for
Thank you for your
Elizabeth?
input.
Anything else? All right. Cool, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else here to speak in opposition? Step on up. You've got up to 5 minutes. We just need you to start with your name and address, please.
Hi, my name's Dean Anderson. I actually live at 100 Market Street, Des Moines, 50309, but I own property at 1345 7th Street, which is about 3 blocks from the Family Dollar. I think I mainly I agree with what has been said already in opposition. I want to comment a little bit about the availability of alcohol and how it's impacting the neighborhood. I serve on a public safety committee that's a joint effort with the 6th Avenue Corridor and the Riverbend Neighborhood Association. And I would say that on probably a daily basis, we call the police already 5 to 6 times regarding public intoxication and loitering, but mainly the drinking problem. And when I'm talking about availability, I mean the proximity to it and where people they walk away with the liquor. That's the problem. I'm not really worried that people are going to spend all their time drinking in the Family Dollar parking lot. They're going to take this and they're going to walk to my yard, and that's where they're going to drink it and throw their can. That's what happens down by the Quick Trip. The bus stop at 6th and University has been destroyed by people drinking there. We put new bus stops on 6th Avenue that are at risk of being destroyed from vandalism. When people get drunk, they party, they wreck the bus stops. There's not a bus stop right now at 6th and University in front of McDonald's because it was destroyed by people that were partying and drunk who carried liquor there, walked with it. They weren't drinking at the Quick Trip. They walked to their neighbors and caused problems. So basically, I just wanted to point out that it's the availability in the neighborhood. And right now, you'll take that liquor further down 6th Avenue, and they'll go into other people's property and cause issues. So definitely against the conditional use permit. Understood if you did grant it. Lots of concerns about the cameras that are there on that property today. I don't think they're adequate, and I think we would definitely want the owners, personally I would want the owners to work more with the police and the neighbors, agree to much better cameras and much better access to those cameras. But generally, this neighborhood is in transition, and I just don't think we're ready for this yet. We're trying really hard to stop the litter, stop the loitering, stop the prostitution, stop the drinking, and having more alcohol right now isn't the right time. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Dean. Any questions for Dean? Okay. Thank you for coming down today. Anybody else that wishes to speak in opposition? I think you've seen how this works.
Hello, I'm Lulu Dickey, and I live in the neighborhood at 1814 Oakland Avenue. I am also on the neighborhood board as well, and I will keep this short because I know this has gone on a long time. I reiterate everything that everyone else already said. Totally agree. My main concern about this conditional use permit is safety. We already have a situation very close to my home on the corner of 6th and Franklin where there has been a conditional use permit granted, and it's a very unsafe property. I actually feel very unsafe even walking by. We have prostitution, panhandling, there's been fights, traffic accidents, things like that that are occurring there. And my concern is that that type of behavior will also occur at Family Dollar. And the reason is that we have a lot of transient people in our neighborhood, and they are looking for places that they can go, hang out, drink, get high, socialize with each other, things like that. And so I'm very concerned about safety. I also think about people in our neighborhood who are more vulnerable than me. A couple months ago, we had a mother come to our meeting, and her son is an adult with a disability, and he lives in one of our 3 care homes that we have in our neighborhood. And she expressed her concern for his safety, even just walking down 6th Avenue. And I just want to make sure that I point out that there are vulnerable people very close to this property who could be harmed if we allow this permit to go through. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the speaker? Nope. Okay, all right, thank you for coming down. Anybody else that wishes to speak in opposition? Going once, going twice. Staff has this on the list. Anybody in neutrality? I still don't understand what that means, but anybody with just anything general they'd like to say related to the issue? All right, seeing none. Do we have any further questions for staff?
There was a reference in one of the documents to like police reports. I don't,
Right.
I don't know, I can't remember if you showed that, but if so, I don't know if you could show those again
Yeah,
for the
good
property.
question.
Yeah.
And Frank, are these,
Just like for the last year?
yeah, kind of remind us, is this at the address or is it within 500 feet of the address? I can't remember.
Within 500 feet.
Within 500 feet. So sometimes it can be difficult to ascertain, is it related to something the business is doing or allowing, or was it just in the neighborhood? Or was this the closest address somebody knew to what was going on? These seem to be simpler than I used to see.
Yeah, I was just going to remark that seems less helpful than
Yeah.
I remember.
That's another way to say it.
Yeah, I'm not directing it at staff, to be clear. I just think the report
Yeah.
itself is, I mean, I don't know what some of these abbreviations even mean.
Yeah.
And some of them I could guess, but be very, very
One of them I
wrong.
know what it means, but I
Well, yeah, I know what it means,
didn't know what kind.
casual use, but not necessarily on this list.
Okay.
And I'm certainly not the authority on.
Sure. And
Please.
in general, Frank, is that, based on your dates, is that the last year? What length of time is this?
It started April 21, so.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Yeah. Okay. And generally, what total do we have? Not to put you on the spot, but I just see a big long run on here. I didn't see that they're numbered like in Excel or anything.
There's several pages worth.
Okay. Yeah, when you request that, that might be something to ask of the police department, if they, you know, how many total calls within the time frame. All right.
I think, well, I get it. I don't know if
Okay.
other people want to keep on scrolling,
Yeah,
but
no.
I'm good.
Other questions for Frank? Frank, to the best of your knowledge, I think maybe, was it Justin might have brought this up, was there ever a conditional use permit for the sale of alcohol with some of these past grocery retailers that were there? Would anybody know? I'm assuming if a business had closed for a certain length of time, then that conditional use permit would have expired, but does anybody know off the cuff, zoning enforcement officer? Sure, yep. Yeah, just introduce yourself when you get there.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, Eric Lundy, zoning enforcement officer.
I think you saw a big shift when the new ordinance was adopted in 2019. A lot of that had to do with how we broke down the definition of our retail categories.
Yep.
Given the history of the conditional use came about in about 1998. At that time, it exempted restaurants and grocery stores. Well, grocery store was a very omnibus defined use at that
Sure.
time. And so many of these have had sales activity, even since then. So
Right.
you have a combination of non-conforming situations that are in
Okay.
continuous use. But whenever it's something new or there's been a gap,
Yep.
of time, under the current ordinance, we're looking at these as limited retail
Right.
with either sales of beer and wine only or beer, wine, and liquor.
Yep.
So when you look at that table, certainly depending on the neighborhood or area, there's a lot of things that affect it, including the separations.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
the answer is yes, there's probably a number of establishments in the general area that might have been operating for years with, beer and wine sales or beer.
At some time.
Yes.
Yeah, but we've had to the best of your knowledge, no recent conditional use permits for this location.
No.
For
and,
sale of alcohol.
I did hear mention of the 6th and Franklin.
Yep.
That had a conditional use granted by the board.
I remember
Actually, the liquor license for that location or the beer and wine permit was discontinued in January. Since that time, there's actually been some other problems with activity there, so a lot
Yep.
of that's getting monitored through
Right.
policing. But
Okay.
the other thing I did want to point out was
Mm-hmm.
the semantics since 2019 on conditional use is that it's conditional use approval because of the litigation we've had. It's not actually a permit as
Okay,
it was
it's an
in the
approval.
previous
Right.
code. So and a lot of that's just to not confuse it with the permitting authority
Yep.
of the Iowa ABD and the city
Right.
council, so.
But if we give approval, we can also take away that approval
That's right,
later on.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think everybody generally understands, and it's hard to change the way we say things, but I just want to
That's a good
clarify
point,
that.
though. I
Yeah.
appreciate that clarification, just
Yeah.
on semantics.
All right.
Yeah. All right, thank you, Eric. Any other questions for city staff? Okay, seeing none, so the applicant, you've got up to 3 minutes for what I would call your closing oratory. So if there's anything you want to add for information, any rebuttal you want to give, you got 3 minutes, Joshua.
I will try to keep this very short, just to address a couple of specific points that were raised during the opposition portion of this hearing. Regarding the amount of staffing at the store is driven on sales. If the store doesn't have a high revenue, it doesn't hire more people. It's a tough economy, and everyone would like to be able to hire more people. If sales went up, additional staff could be hired. Family Dollar believes that the staff that it has on site are adequate to present or to preserve and protect its interests on the property. Regarding decision-making and responsiveness, there are some of the issues raised at the neighborhood meeting, and Family Dollar is a nationwide business. There are certain questions and policies that have to be addressed at higher levels because they might affect more than one store location. For example, if it were ever to Family Dollar were to ever pursue a conditional use permit in another store in the area. However, it does have numbers posted for people to contact directly to deal with issues related to loitering and littering at the property. We'll continue to do so, including for the district manager. And finally, to the concern that this approval will last the property forever, as has been emphasized just now, it's subject to that approval being withdrawn if it ever becomes a nuisance and fails to meet the criteria that are set forth. Based on the criteria in the city code and the application that Family Dollar has submitted, we believe that we meet the criteria for the conditional use subject to the conditions set by staff and are committed to, Family Dollar is committed to working to meet those conditions and understands that the approval will be revoked if it fails to do so. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Joshua. Okay, all right, well, that concludes the public portion of this agenda item. So now we'll close the public portion and go to board deliberation. So board members, any initial thoughts on this? Nathan?
So I'll say I'm a little conflicted. Obviously, like to hear directly from neighborhood and the neighbors, and we've heard that today. I do think there's a case to be made that by granting this, we're going to have I guess members of this board, but also the neighborhood, will have some additional leverage over this company, this site, and we could put in some additional restrictions that address some of the concerns. In fact, they've already gotten one of the things that they've asked for. It did seem like a lot of the complaints are about kind of the area and not necessarily directly attributable to this particular building. And some of it, is outside of their control at all, right? The flip side is, I guess, that it seems like with all of those concerns about the area, the neighborhood is kind of taking a stand that we shouldn't have any more of this right now, right? And maybe it doesn't have anything to do specifically with this site, but it is about the area. And I think that is one of the, criteria that we're able to look at and evaluate. And so maybe it isn't about, potentially 2% and a pretty small amount of alcohol being sold here. It's just why add to, a problem that they're seeing already. So I'm kind of in the middle.
Other thoughts? Justin?
Thank you, Chair. I have a small business that's in that area, 6th Avenue and Hickman, Community Dealers of Iowa. And, I've seen the last 5 years real growth in that area, development, a lot of turnaround, a lot of community members invested in the neighborhood, doing good things for that neighborhood, celebrating the diversity that's in that neighborhood. I do have concerns with this proposal. It's very sensitive because you have on that corridor, you have transitional housing, you have Salvation Army there, you have Door Faith, you have St. Vincent de Paul. You have a lot of immigrant families that are in that area. So very vulnerable sectors of the population. So I am concerned. I do think that it may not meet the point 1 here in the criteria about it adequately safeguarding the health and safety of the neighbors and the businesses that are in that area.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Others? Well, I can't resist the opportunity to comment as the chair. Some good comments here, and I appreciate everybody on any side of this. We want businesses to be successful in Des Moines. Businesses in Des Moines help create jobs. They create a quality of life for our citizens with the products they sell. Our residents do the same. They own properties. They live here for 30 years. They volunteer for their neighborhood associations. They care too. So the challenge we often have is to balance those concerns, but we have to do it within the context of our purview here at the board. From listening to the testimony today on both sides, very important. Some of the things, and like Nathan said, well, this is a tough one. You could almost say, is it glass half full or is it glass half empty, if you want to start comparing issues. But I asked the applicant about other locations they have. They have some other locations that their company has, some not too far away. They don't sell alcohol at that location. The reason is, well, they would have had to request a variance because they were too close to a school, place of worship, daycare center, or something. But apparently the business still works. It appears that the primary reason to do this is probably just within the perception I'm getting, yeah, it wouldn't be a whole lot of sales. But the general model of the company probably is, hey, we like to sell all this that we can. It's, I think it was stated, it's a convenience to our customers already shopping here, so why not sell that? On a normal circumstance, I might say, sure, not a problem. But inquiring a little further, we're not selling a case of beer. We're not selling a six-pack. I don't want to get into defining how many ounces somebody can sell. But if we're selling single-serving containers out of here, which is what was stated, now I start to get a little concerned because some of the neighbors said, hey, listen, we've already had concerns at this location. What's going on here is already a concern. The amount of litter, the amount of loitering, the noise, the light. And somebody else said that, well, yeah, by itself this is maybe no big deal, but with what we already have there with these concerns, it's certainly going to exacerbate it. And I would certainly think it would. I'm not trying to be Professor Harold Hill that we got trouble in River City and alcohol is evil, but at the same time, when we already have concerns with the property, surrounding area, we have to take that into account too. Not problems at somebody else's location, but how would this impact the surrounding area? I do see concerns with that. If we would approve this, just as an approval, it would run with the property. So if they decide to sell to a different retailer, they could potentially sell up to 40%. Now, granted, they might have to do it from a very small sales area if we were to approve this and define the sales area. But I am concerned that when we look at the rationale to make our decision that this would tend to have a detrimental impact on the neighborhood. The concerns present now with noise, light, general conditions for those in the area. We've got litter blowing around. It's obvious the dumpsters aren't even where they're supposed to be here. So in this case, I don't think alcohol would help the property. So that's a concern I've got. Anybody want to add anything else or make a motion one way or the other? Staff is recommending approval.
I think, Mel, that obviously this neighborhood is trying to make some improvements, and I think what I'm hearing, and I agree with some of the other comments, is that this is just going to continue to contribute to some of the things that they're trying to overcome. And it's not the fault of anyone. I think it's just a situation that they're having to deal with, and this isn't certainly Family Dollar's problem, but I think it is something that, just based on their whole retail model, it's a glorified convenience store that doesn't sell gas to me. And I think until recently, everything cost $1, hence the name. Now, I think things are more than $1 now, but I'm going to tend to be pretty sensitive to just what these neighbors have said, and just the overall attitude of what they're trying to accomplish there. And I'm going to give them a lot of credit for standing up and continuing to try and make this a better place, because that is extremely challenging. If you just look at the surroundings, some of the organizations that are located there, the people that hang out at some of these places or need these services are the kind of people that I think kind of suffer from some of this, and they can't help themselves sometimes. And I'm not going to sit here and try and save the world, but I think as a community, I think it's incumbent on us to help support some of these initiatives and to stand up. And I'm not here to pick winners and losers, but I think I'm going to side on the side of this neighborhood and give these guys a lot of credit for what they're trying to accomplish. And if limiting some of the availability of things like this is going to help, I think it's up to us to help them do that, because this is our community. So those are just some of my thoughts.
Sure.
I'll make a motion to deny.
Okay. All right, so we've got a motion to deny the requested conditional use for limited retail sales of wine and beer. That's been seconded by Tom. So those in favor of denying the requested approval, raise your right hand and say aye. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, that's a 7-0 on that. So that decision and order will be made available within the next week, if anybody needs a copy of that for their records. Again, we appreciate everybody being here today. We do appreciate our businesses investing in our neighborhoods, and we hope that everybody continues to find a way to work together so everyone can be successful, both as residents and businesses there. So thank you for coming down today. All right, that'll bring us to our next agenda item, which is item number 9. That's a use variance request at 1100 Army Post Road. And I want to apologize that I didn't introduce Catherine Drehas, city planner, earlier.
You did.
I did? Okay.
Yeah, I waved my hand.
Well, I'm just introducing you again. So,
Thank you.
So welcome, Catherine. Good to see you.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, Catherine Drehas, planner for the city of Des Moines. The item before us is located at 1100 Army Post Road, and they are looking for a use variance to allow for outdoor storage. This item came to the attention of the city through code enforcement. I'll speak a little bit about the violation going forward. You'll notice that it is located on a corner of Army Post Road and Southwest 11th Street. The vast majority of the property is essentially fronting on that Southwest 11th Street portion. And then we're specifically looking at the area highlighted by the appellant in their submitted site sketch. So it is that southern portion of the property. Number of different photos here, so I'll probably scroll through them a little bit quickly. Let me know if you want to see any in more depth. And these are from the enforcement cases taken at different times showing the outdoor storage use, and then just a few more of the property. Staff will note that there is a sanitary sewer that was identified as running about 18 feet north of the south property line. It runs east-west, parallel with that southern property line through this particular area, so it makes it even more fun. And then, so in November of 2021, the appellant should have received notification of a violation, which stated, upon inspection, there was found to be inoperable, unsafe, and/or unlicensed vehicles, vehicular component parts, and/or miscellaneous junk and debris stored outside. This is something that cannot be done in the RX1 mixed-use district. So the appellant did reach out and apply to Plan and Zoning Commission to seek rezoning of their property to the I1 industrial district, which would allow this outdoor use. That request was denied by the City Council in March of this year, which allows them the remedy of coming before the Board of Adjustment to seek this use variance. And then staff, did not feel that the appellant had successfully established an unnecessary hardship. There is significant, I'll go back up, significant indoor storage opportunities based on our photographs, in our opinion. And so we do not feel that with that not being established, that we would recommend denial of this particular request. If I could answer any questions for you, I'd be more than happy to. And I'll scroll down here and just show you that we did receive one card in opposition to the neighborhood notification, and I'll zoom in on that. It's a little bit hard to see. Let's get rid of this.
Just maybe,
that side.
there we go. Yeah, I told you. Can you maybe help with some translation here?
My assumption would be that the respondent was referring to the rezoning request, and that would probably be where he's saying that the request had already been made, and as such, just was unaware that it could then go before the Board of Adjustment.
Okay.
And that's about the extent of what I
But I think I see the word tavern a couple times.
I saw that as well.
That's, I guess, where I need the interpretation. Was there anything related to a tavern use proposed for this property?
No, I assume that's just a general sense of the area by the respondent. I'm afraid
So in other
I can't
words,
really
hey, we had an
respond to
issue
that.
nearby with a tavern, and I told you what was going to happen, and it did, and it was bad. I don't want this. Or it'll be
Along
bad
those
for
lines.
us. Okay.
Your guess is as good as mine.
Okay. Catherine, back on the radius map of the comment cards, the zoning districts show up. Can you show that again?
Yeah.
So the property immediately to the south of this kind of enclosed storage area, there's like a garage, a white garage. I'm assuming that's part of a residential property for what I would call the Fisher
Yes.
property?
That would
Yeah.
be correct, at least.
And
in
that's
my
zone
opinion.
N3B, which is a residential neighborhood district, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I might
For
have-
the RX1 use of the property in question here, I see there what I would call a couple garages or storage buildings, or maybe even a business frontage. The appellant's use of those buildings at this time, those are okay, or he's in compliance on that part of the property? Is that correct? Okay.
What's in front of us is merely
Yep.
the
Okay.
exterior outdoor storage.
And hold that picture.
Okay.
With this photo, I see tires, junk, debris, trash, garbage, et cetera, and I also see at least a 2 or 3 strand barbed wire fence. Was that part of the violation noted? Are barbed wire fences like that allowed in Des Moines, in these kind of districts? I'm just curious. I'm not trying to quiz you, but.
It
Okay.
might have been
All right. If it's
grandfathered in.
pre-existing,
Yeah, unfortunately, we're
Okay.
not.
This was C2.
Yeah, which is still pretty nice and innocuous, but if we were inclined to grant approval for this with a variance, would we allow that same kind of fencing, or would they have to get into kind of a site use plan now? Would they have to get into a site plan for that?
Site plan? Yeah, they would
Okay.
need a site plan if you were inclined to, if you were to grant
Okay,
the use variance.
all right, gotcha. Okay, thank you. Nathan?
I just noticed that the next item is like very close geographically. It doesn't have any relationship to this. It's just a similar request in a similar geographic area. Is that?
It's similar in that he's seeking a use variance as well, and I believe it is for automotive repair, but I believe it's different in.
Okay.
Right.
in
Not a related property owner
Not a
or
related
business owner?
property
Okay.
owner, different property owner, different request, just
Okay.
happens to be
All right.
relatively close.
But in quick summary, so I got the order of appearance. The appellant asked to have the property rezoned first, planning and zoning. They denied that.
Correct. Well, they recommended denial to the city
They
council.
recommended
and the
denial to city
denied
council,
it.
and then city council also, in essence, said, we'll uphold your recommendation, and they denied the
Correct.
rezoning. Okay. All right. Anything else for Catherine? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, we've seen how this works, so applicant, please step on up. We just need your name, address, and you've got up to 10 minutes to present your case.
Mark Lyle, 1100 Army Post Road. Sorry, I'm nervous, so.
That's okay. Take it easy. We're here to talk.
I've owned the property for 7 years. So I grew up on the south side, I live on the south side. I have several businesses on the south side. And I also have a full-time job on the south side. So I kind of question how I got here. I've talked to Jimmy, the inspector. That's there, and he pretty much explained that there's a whole bunch of buildings that's on the south side that's got lit up in conjunction or whatever. I kind of feel like a pond in this. I know the neighbor several doors to the west of us had a house there that was in trouble with the neighbor. But when I bought the property, it's a 6-foot fence with barbed wire. I assume it's to keep stuff inside the yard. Why else are we protecting a grass with 6-foot fence with barbed wire on top? I did not check the code. Yeah. I started off, I was really mad. I was like, why did I do this? I've had this for 6 years. We've never had a problem. In this last year, we've been trying to get through this situation. We did have a neighborhood meeting. I was surprised that I had 2 people. I was expecting nobody. And it ended up turning a different situation. So what I did is I went around to all the neighbors, the businesses, the church, the neighborhood associations, and right here, if you look at that, that's 1103. That's the guy that said no. I think if you could pull up the reviews from the zoning neighborhood meeting, that gentleman showed up. He was all talking about Nick's Bar at the time. And at Nick's Bar, he's on the back of Nick's Bar. And they were having alcohol there. And he was confused when he showed up with me. He actually talked to me, and he was all about what's going on with his alcohol there. And I'm like, I don't have anything to do with Nick's Bar. This is all about me, my outside storage, and my trailers. And he's kind of kitty corner because he's right behind Nick's Bar. And he goes, I don't care about the outside trailers. He goes, I have 3 of them in my driveway as it is. He goes, and your outside stuff I don't care about. So, I mean, I think it was a great opportunity for me because I've had the property for a while. I went around to all the neighbors. I think there was like 39 of them that I went to. I talked to everybody. Only 2 people didn't sign that I talked to. One was so scared she wouldn't open the door, and she talked to me through the window. The other one didn't speak any English, so that she did. So I got 39 signatures. I have them here. I'd be more than happy to pass them around from businesses. The association was in favor of recommending this property. You go back to all the neighbors, they looked at me like, why are we having this conversation? To, I never even noticed, to, oh, that doesn't bother me a bit. That's the neighbors that live within a 2-block radius of where we're at. But the review that I have here, this guy signed. I talked to him very specifically and nice. With that, it's also on there, that's the same address. He signed that. I mean, I think he's confused with that there. So I think that's the biggest thing with that. So, flipping through, sorry. The sidewalk. They tried to put in a sidewalk there. Said they want to do that like 2 years ago. That mower trailer that I usually kept there was there at the time. They did that. The city come through. When the sidewalk came through, somebody had to inspect the city. They even poured the driveway through that fence. Nobody said anything at that time about, this is not right, I can't have that stuff. As far as the yellow truck that was on the other picture, that's not mine, that's the neighbor to the south. Don't have anything to do with that. And there is car wash equipment in there. There are tires in there holding on tarps, and we probably should have done something different, but they leave them at the car wash. We dispose of them, but every now and then we just use them to cover up stuff to keep the tarps in the winter out of it. It was a little messier, get it, but that was in November. It's kind of hard to clean up. We have cleaned it up. We need to keep it clean. I intend to keep it clean. Sometimes it does do that, but that's where we keep the snow, is where that truck usually is before the sidewalk. Now we have it's all driveway, and so we have the equipment to actually move it up the front, and that's what we've been doing. But snow removal, now that the sidewalk's there, is certainly a problem. It was last week. We normally keep a trailer there in the summertime to go mow. I had to drive 20 minutes to go get the trailer, bring it back to the south side to get the mower that's in the garage, go mow, then I drop the mower off, then I got to go drop, and then come back to the south side where I live. It's just a problem. It's a convenience to leave it there. We never block, because that's one thing the association, he goes, do you ever block the sidewalk? I'm like, no, we don't park in the street. We don't block the sidewalk. Everything's off the way, out of the way. Sometimes it's not exactly the safest neighborhood in the area, so we try not to keep it anything there longer than we have to, but it's just a logistics thing. We try not to keep it there all the time. I do want to keep it so we can keep at least one trailer there all the time. You know, in the wintertime, it's more snow removal than anything else. I've talked to the city. I talked to Eric, I think you were there with Sue Ann, and Frank's been good too. I've tried to figure out with Jimmy of what can I do to be legal so we didn't have to go through all this. And it's very frustrating because he goes, yeah, you can do that, but that won't work because of the property. I mean, there is no backyard. The whole back property line is the back of the buildings. There's nothing. Sue Ann and Frank and Eric have been great to work with. We're just trying to get through there. The zoning meetings and everything else, everybody passed the buck. So I get that I don't fit in the ideal situation, but zoning meetings, especially at the city one before this one where they turned me down, they wanted to help me out, but they were afraid that I was going to turn it into a manufacturing place. It's a 7-car garage with a office the size of a bathroom. I mean, it's really small. There's nothing there. But they all passed the buck on to you guys to try to make this hint. It's a hardship. I get it that it doesn't fit. And I need some help from you guys. So, like I said, all the neighbors, nobody cares. The neighborhood association, like, why are we having this conversation? I talked to them too. They got approval. I didn't hear them say anything about that. At the zoning meeting, they did say they approved of it, didn't have any problem with the trailer or outside storage as it was. Everybody I've talked to, as it was. No privacy fence, nothing, and it was dirtier than it is now, but I do try to keep it clean. But the neighborhood association, that's what they're there for. They're there to kind of give guidance of what it is. The one to the north, there is no neighborhood association, so I actually joined the neighborhood to the north, but they came out, looked at it, and they had no problem with it at all. The neighbor across the street, and I'm not here to point fingers, he's got outside storage. I bought a trailer that was in his driveway. I still own it. I mean, on the other side, that's what they have. It's the same problem. I don't know what and why. All I'm saying is this is it's not right, and I'm just trying to. If you could, please tie it to the property. I know you guys can do a lot of stuff, but I just don't want the next guy to have to do the same thing. All I am asking for is what I've had for the last 7 years. Some outside storage and at least a trailer. We use all the garage space. There's a lot of commercial shelving space for various different parts. We do our own snow removal. We do our own mowing. We have all of our own. We do our own fencing. I mean, we try to do everything just because it's otherwise. I have a lot of employees that I pay, and it's like we can do it and we do it better. But I disagree with the one that did. I talked to him and he had it. I pulled out his piece of paper, but I do have everybody's signatures if you guys want to see it. I appreciate your patience. This is a thankless job, and I can't say thank you enough for what you do. So, do you have any questions?
Questions for Mark? Justin?
Mark, is the, what I'm trying to figure out, you mentioned the trailer. I don't know if is the trailer an issue here, or is it just the outside fencing
I need
area?
the trailer just for logistics, so I don't have to go to West Des Moines and pick it up. So sometimes we keep 2 trailers there, but usually that's just a day or 2. We don't, but like in the summertime, we're mowing like every 4 days. For me to go get it and come back and mow is just difficult.
Oh.
Now, we do have property out there, but I don't have any place to keep the mower out there other than the trailer, and that won't be safe either. So a lot of times we keep all the trailers out in West Des Moines. So we pick them up, bring them back as we're out there. I'm going to need it tomorrow, bring it back tonight so we're ready to go for tomorrow.
Got it. Thank you.
So, and we never block the street or the sidewalk. I promise that. We will never do that.
Which you can't.
Well, I totally
Yeah,
get,
that's
but my
not
guys.
deal making. That's not deal making. You're not
Usually
allowed to
we
do
park it and block the garage doors is what we do, is parallel the garage doors.
So, Mark, related question. You said that you store your trailers in West Des Moines at your location there.
Yes.
What zoning district are your trailers stored in West Des Moines?
We just rent the lot. I have no idea what the storage is. So I don't own the property.
You might want to check, but I'm assuming, and again, I want you to think through this. I'm assuming that you're an industrial district in West Des Moines, and where the trailers are stored meet their zoning requirements. You're asking us to allow you outdoor storage of a trailer in the city of Des Moines on a property where both planning and zoning has recommended no rezoning for outdoor storage. City council has said no rezoning for outdoor storage. And yet you want us to allow you to store this little trailer outside.
Well, and I guess I did make a mistake. I assumed the 6-foot fence with barbed wire was for outside storage. There again, it's like Why else is grass what we're protecting?
Well, keeping telling us that you're making mistakes doesn't help your status.
Well-
Sometimes to solve a small problem, people think that they have to have huge solutions here. So why can't you just look at storing the trailer somewhere else close by that meets requirements? Or, this is a question for you, did you ever propose, well, gee, could I expand my existing building to allow storage of the trailer inside? Because apparently you store equipment inside now on the property, and that's
Correct.
legal. Are you not allowed to expand the building? Do you not have enough setback?
I know I talked to Jimmy about what I could do, and everything you could do that, but
Yep.
you can't do it on this because of that. The property's too narrow, and there's no backyard or back, if, we have an Army Post
Okay.
Road, but it's more like 1100 Army
Well,
Post Road.
I kind of get it. You have a small property, but if we were inclined to approve this, you'd have to now create a site plan. You're going to have to hire a civil engineer and landscape architects to do a site plan for you. And
To-
you're going to have
just-
to have hard surfacing to store a trailer outside, even if we were inclined to grant this variance.
You can't grant a variance to what we've had for the last 6 years?
Just roll it into the lot, over the curb in the grass, and keep your stuff thrown around? Is that
Well,
what you're asking?
I don't know. There again, like I told Sue Ann, I said, I don't know the codes. I sleep good at night.
You need to learn the code.
Obviously.
I know you run a good business. I go to your car washes.
I-
You know how to do things the right way when you want to.
I do.
And I would encourage you to look into this. I'd like to find a solution here.
I promise you, the next property I will buy, I will double check the codes.
Yes,
I
yes.
promise. There's no question about it. This has been a learning curve. It's been a good thing in the long run because I got to know all the neighbors. But, there again, the 6-foot fence kind of grandfathered me in.
Well-
I assumed that, and I know what that means, but
Exactly.
I assumed I was good.
Well,
And I was for 6 years. And the city did put in the approach to that. They poured concrete into that.
that was done by engineering and/or public works. They don't do zoning or nuisance enforcement. I
Paid by the city.
also live near here. So when you talk about the neighbors are okay with it, I can tell you a letter I wrote 2 weeks ago about something not too far from here that I was very disappointed with. You sit just off the corridor enough with this issue, you probably didn't get reported by other people who would have been concerned. But when we're looking at a variance, we've got to be very careful with that. So I'm just very concerned that you're proposing an industrial use. There have been other proposals for that in the past in this area. Those have been denied. Planning and zoning, council, even Board of Adjustment. I take each case at its face value, but I'm really not getting from you, the variance test is a difficult one. You have to have extreme hardships. You're already using the property to your benefit. The rest of it looks okay, but you're basically saying, yeah, it'd be more convenient if you give me this variance to store a trailer outside. Is that what it boils down to?
I need the outside storage and a trailer. And I guess, where I'm trying to go is it is a hardship because that's why I bought the property, because it had so much space out front that you could do. And
You've gotten good use of it so far with 3 or 4 overhead
has.
garage doors?
And I guess I was going by the neighborhood association and the neighbors and the businesses.
Right.
Nobody cared.
Right. You're not in the neighborhood association area, though, correct?
They are just adjacent, and depending on.
That'd be Watcher South and Mr. Mitch Harris, if I'm correct?
Yes.
Is that who you talked to?
Yes.
Yeah, but you're truly not in their neighborhood boundaries.
And there is not one, or I would have
Right.
talked to them, or probably in addition to.
Yeah, yeah.
But none of the neighbors I talked to have any issue with what I was doing at the time.
Right.
And I'm not looking to rezone it, I just need to be able to keep my outside
You
storage.
were looking to rezone it.
And I don't want that. And what Sue Ann said is that you guys could make the variance to keep a trailer and outside storage. And that's all I am ever asking
Okay.
for.
Okay. All right. Well, you've answered my question, so thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mark? Okay. All right. Seeing none, we'll get back to you here in just a couple minutes. You can go ahead and sit down, Mark. Is there anybody here that wishes to speak in support of the applicant's request? Seeing none, is there anybody to speak in opposition to the applicant's request? Anybody that wants to speak in neutrality? Any questions for city staff from the board?
What's it take for him to keep this trailer there? Does it have to be inside one of those buildings?
You can decide however you want to do that.
Eric promised he'd help coach me through any questions that we get from this afterwards. Yes, he would have to store the trailer inside to have that trailer on site. So it would not be allowed to be stored outside on his property.
Can he add on to his existing building to the, where the outside storage is?
It does get a little tough.
I mean, he's going
I
to need some
suppose if
variances
he-
maybe based on lot lines and stuff, but I guess that's a yes or no. Could he?
Possible versus feasible,
The
though.
short answer is unfortunately no, because of that sanitary sewer that runs approximately just along here.
So it runs
It goes
underneath
right,
that.
yeah.
Got
And
it.
so he would not be able to build a structure over that.
So he couldn't even pave that area if he wanted to, probably.
Pavement, yes. That does get a little tricky if and when Public Works would need to access that,
Yeah.
so.
Right.
Even if the sewer wasn't there, in bordering an N3B, a residential district, there'd still be a setback
Yes.
requirement. I don't know what that would be, but I would assume it could be 5 to 15 feet, something like
Off
that.
the top of my head, side
Right,
yard
right.
setback, yeah, probably about 5 feet, but
And even if
can't
we
quite
would
remember.
allow the outdoor trailer storage, we would still have some limitations therein and requirements for landscaping and, again,
Correct.
full site plan, correct?
Yes, yeah, at that point, you're you're essentially triggering that full site
Yep.
plan compliance.
Okay.
Well, and I'm just trying to, one, understand what his options are, and two, if there's a solution here. I mean, we've got a guy that's runs a nice business. He bought a piece of property that he didn't realize what he could and couldn't do with it. Maybe there's stuff in these garages that need to be stored somewhere else so the trailer can go in there because they're less needed. I don't know. I'm just trying to understand what's going on, and it's
Gotcha.
it's a tough deal. Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks, Catherine. Mark, yeah, you can come up here for what we call the closing or rebuttal. You've got up to 3 minutes. Anything you want to add?
Just a couple things. I mean, the mower trailer probably would fit in one of the garages, but the other trailers are too long because we do our own snow removal, so they're long like a car trailer, and the garages are too short to fit all of that in anyway.
Yep.
So to keep the trailer inside, unless we could go clear to the property line, probably wasn't. 2 years ago, we did keep a trailer in the yard with a skid loader on it, and still nobody said anything.
Well, the fact that nobody says anything, I get it, and I know you're just up
And
there going.
I want to be a good neighbor, and I try to keep everything clean. That's why I went and talked to everybody. And it's been a really good experience to at least talk to everybody, see what's going on in the neighborhood. But the trailers, there's one out of the 5 that I have that will fit. The rest won't. So. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Mark. All right, we'll go ahead and close the public portion then and go to board deliberation.
Well, I can understand why he's frustrated operating in one way for a long period of time and then going to the rezoning process and this and having what's perceived as mixed messages from the city when they came out, although, as you pointed out, Mel, it's kind of a different part of the city. But all that said, it's illegal. It was illegal 6 years ago, and it's been illegal the entire time. And just because it wasn't noticed until now doesn't make it legal. And so the request now, I do think that the straightforward way was to get it rezoned. I don't know if they were passing the buck or just trying to, I'm not sure, keep hope alive when they're rejecting an application. But that was the most, in my mind, reasonable approach to solving this, because the variance test, as we're all well aware, that he would need to meet to get his variance approved from our perspective under the law is incredibly difficult, and it would require that he would have to show that the property can't yield a reasonable return from any use permitted by the subject zoning regulations, not just that the value of the land has been depreciated or that a zoning variance would permit the owner to maintain a more profitable use, but he would have to prove that he has been deprived of all beneficial or productive use of the subject property without this variance. He's not come close to meeting that, and I think so. I'll be voting no.
Other thoughts?
Sure. I think it's more of an issue of inconvenience rather than an undue hardship.
Yeah, so we hear you.
All right, it's
Yeah.
on. I was just
Good
not
order.
close enough. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
More of an issue of inconvenience rather than an undue hardship here. And so I would make a motion to support staff recommendation of denial of the requested zoning variance due to the fact that it doesn't meet the criteria for the variance.
I would second that.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay. All right, so we got a motion by Justin and a second by Marlis for a denial of the requested variance. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Okay. Mark, you run a good business. You have good car washes. You employ good people. You're maybe just growing a little too big at this little location here. So I encourage you to get things spiffed up around there and talk to city's economic development about finding maybe a larger place so you can continue to grow that meets the zoning requirements. All right? All right, we appreciate you coming down today and waiting around to get to this one. I know you got other good things to be doing. Okay, that concludes that agenda item. I'm going to take a 5-minute break here, or I'm going to call for a 5-minute break, and I'm going to take one. So we will resume in 5 minutes. call the hearing back to order here. Okay, we're ready for item number 10, use variance request, not too far away, at 1022 Army Post Road.
Chair, members of the board, Frank Dunn speaking. So 1022 Army Post Road, the proposal is a use of property for vehicle maintenance, repair, minor use. The use variance is to allow uses, alternate uses permitted in our RX1 mixed use district. I'm going to go ahead and scroll here. Here's the site that is in question, right here. It is on the south side of Army Post Road, in between Southwest 10th Street, Southwest 11th Street. Across the street and next to the property are vehicle sales lots. There are commercial retail sales, both east and across the street. There's a mix of uses that travel up and down the corridor. Oh, Bert, you got... That's all right. There's a little mouse snafu going on there. Tug of war. Here is a view of the property from the front facing south. As you can see, there's glazing on the front, a door to the east. Garage door, that is. This is a view along the front facing east. Property in question, the building. Here's how the applicant is looking at using the property. Parking in the rear. There would be some parking in the front. Both appears to be ADA compliant parking stalls. Closer image, and some employee parking there as well. Close up of the rear parking. And I'll zoom in so this is a little easier to see. So just a little description about the property. It measures approximately 7,160 square feet in area, and then the property contains a 1,800 square foot vacant building that was previously used as a pawn shop. Had been modified to have an overhead automobile service store on the east facade that was shown in the image. And I am not sure what happened to the rest. Let me grab my thumb drive. It's not there. Let's see.
And what are you looking for here, Frank?
Yeah.
The rest of the report?
Yeah, well, I was looking for a couple other pages, the comment section.
Sure.
For this particular appeal, staff has looked at it in terms of granting the hardship for a use variance. Staff does not feel as though it's consistent with the intent and spirit of the zoning ordinance for granting the variance, and so staff has recommended denial. I do, I know that in the folder I have the comments, so I would like to grab those. There are some comment cards that were sent in with folks that were both proposed or in favor and opposed to the request. I would like to note some of the history associated with this project. Recently, in April, the project had sought a rezoning before the Planning and Zoning Commission. And as part of that review by the Planning and Zoning Commission, they had both recommended approval along with staff had recommended approval of the request to allow the use that they are proposing at the site. When it went before council, that use was, as proposed, was denied. And so we are here today to discuss the context of that proposal.
2 comment cards?
2 comment cards, yes.
Go to the scanner.
Yeah. I have to turn it on. Okay.
I think we've seen this one.
Yeah.
Yep. And
He's also in the same notification.
so there's one in support, one in opposition, and so one of those, as you had seen before, they do not wish to see this site being turned into a tavern. The other one...
I mean, it's commenting on a totally separate property, right? Like it has nothing to do with, yeah.
Yep, and it just so happened that the notifications happened roughly around the same time, so that's wherein lies some of the confusion that took place.
So, just to go through the history, procedural history, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval, and then the City Council denied it, and that's...
That is correct.
What was the request to rezone to?
The request...
it's right here, MX3.
Yep, MX3, and MX3 would allow for the vehicle maintenance and repair minor use.
That's a mixed-use district, right, of mixed-use commercial businesses that may support, neighborhoods and corridors. It's not an industrial use, right?
That is correct, and so that is a difference between rezoning to an I-1 use, for instance, that would allow.
And P&Z, you said, had voted for approval, yet council denied it. You don't have to dig here, but P&Z is, I think, up to 15 members. Do you know what the vote for approval was on that? Any idea? Okay, well, that's helpful to understand. So, if we were inclined to grant this variance, they'd then have to turn around and meet site plan requirements and go back probably, through administrative review and/or P&Z again? Is that right?
Not necessarily P&Z, but they would have to go through administrative review for the change of use.
And currently, the property use, there's no landscaping, it's paved right up to the property line, there's parking up to the right-of-way. I'm assuming that would not be allowed, even if we allow the use, the variance. They would not be able to just park the way they are, have the property appear the way it does now. Is that correct?
That is correct. They would have to work through the code, and they would have Chapter 135, the design code, and they would, any of those items that were outside of the realm of the code, they would have to request a waiver, type 1, type 2 design exceptions, which possibly could take them in front of the P&Z for consideration of the site plan at that point in time.
Okay. And another quick one, I'm familiar with the location. It was a pawn shop, jewelry store. I know it had been closed for a while, but this overhead door thing, how did all this begin? Did the applicant come forward on their own and ask for a zoning change to facilitate a proposed business? Or did a business start there and somebody went, hey, what's going on here? Do you have any idea how this review process began for this use?
I believe that there was some enforcement action that took place. I would ask our zoning enforcement officer to correct me on that if I'm wrong.
Yeah, that's cool. Sure, if you want to, quick, yeah. Yeah. I understand.
I started having a dry cough, so I didn't know. So the enforcement history on this centers around the occupancy of this, that it had formerly been a pawn store or a pawnbroker, and then it was occupied with a vehicle repair category use. I think they're very specialized, and there was some other enforcement activity on the window signs and
Okay.
so forth.
Yep.
In fact, that might have been what brought it to our attention at the time. I know we've been aggressively reviewing all the corridors
Yes,
in the
thank you.
city,
Yep.
so that's probably why you're seeing a number of
Okay.
cases along these areas.
Okay.
So based on that, this use had moved in, I believe, from just next door, where they would have been considered
Okay.
in continuous use. So that triggered the enforcement action. Then they were given, their remedies to that, which was to seek the rezoning and also to then seek use variance if they were denied the
Okay.
rezoning. They would still be subject to some site plan regulations with change of use if this were
Gotcha.
granted, as mentioned in the previous case.
Okay.
Separately, there might be a question of, if everything else is denied here, whether there's some ability to resume the previous use, and I think we would have to still make a written determination on that at their request in order to make that, an official determination at this point.
Sure. Okay. Thank you, Eric.
Hey, Eric, excuse me, were they in compliance at their old location?
I wouldn't say necessarily compliance, because they would have been a non-conforming use, but they would have been in continuous use.
So by moving, they triggered,
Yeah, so
An
in
action.
2019, a lot of this area was rezoned to this RX1 zoning category that doesn't allow, vehicle repair as a category of use.
Okay.
So a number of businesses may have become non-conforming at that point, but operating in continuous use per the allowances of the ordinance.
Okay. Thanks. Thank you, Eric. Yeah. Anybody else have questions for Eric? Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right. Or Frank. All right.
I had one more. Sorry. Well, for either of you, yeah, I just wanted to see the map again of the zoning areas, or just like how close it was to the others.
We zoom in on that a little bit.
Okay. Okay, that's helpful. Do you know if the city council, I understand that staff gives kind of the various options and doesn't predict how any of them might turn out to the applicant when they run into problems like this. Do you know, though, if the city council specifically mentioned a variance, use variance, or coming to the zoning board of adjustment or anything like that? I guess I can ask the applicant because he was probably there. But
I went back and I watched the taping, and it did not mention a use variance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They just reviewed it on the merits of a rezoning request and then denied it.
That is correct. I think that there was some, and I would like the applicant to speak to this, but the applicant wasn't able to be at the meeting due to, I guess, circumstances out of their control. And
Okay.
so I don't know that there was a great deal of opportunity for someone to speak regarding the project
Okay.
that was in front of them.
All right. Anything else for Frank then? Okay, well, let's go ahead and hear from the applicant. I think they've been waiting patiently. All right, you guys have maybe seen how the process works, so whoever would like to speak, we just need your name, address, and you've got up to 10 minutes to present your request.
Alan Kennedy, 1054 150th Avenue, Carlisle, Iowa, 50047. I'm representing the business at 1022 Army Post Road. I'm the owner of the business. We've been doing it for 4 years now. We, like was mentioned before, we were at 1026 Army Post Road, just west of it. Back in November, the property sold. The property owner owned both properties, ours and the one next door, and offered us a remedy. Hey, my pawn shop, due to COVID, I've only been open up by appointment only anyways, so I'd like to fully retire and get out of this. It'll be a less of a transition for your customers if you just move next door. I thought, great. It's a bigger building anyways, and less headache for my customers. We service close to 300 people every 30 days who need ignition interlock devices installed and recalibrated in their vehicles to maintain their restricted license with the state. We're the only shop in the metro area that offers 3 different contracts for 3 different companies. That's the reason why we got the contracts we did, because of the corridor that we're on. We're the only ones that are open on Saturdays. We have customers that drive up from Missouri to get their device serviced with us. It's a 10-minute process. It's where they pay their monthly bill with us. We service it. It's a cord that plugs into their car, services, they're in and out. All these appointments are scheduled with them prior to them showing up, so it's not like we have a huge influx of cars backing up Army Post and obstructing traffic or anybody. They're all set, and everybody understands that. The customers have gotten really good with the way they pull in. They pull in, they go to the back. There's a carport in the back of the building, as you can see. This picture is old because we cleaned up the property. We got rid of all the debris, all the stuff that was accumulated over the course of years when it was the pawn shop. Our other plans were to revitalize the outside of the building, make it look better. I'm a South Sider. I was born and raised. We live in Carlisle now, but I've always wanted to have my business on the south side of Des Moines. So we need this variance because the minor automotive, it's classified as minor automotive, but we're not in there pulling motors and transmissions, and it's nothing dirty. It's literally 20 minutes we'll have a vehicle on our property to install this equipment. It's an electronic equipment that just basically plugs into the vehicle. So we won't have vehicles being stored there. We won't have junk being stored outside. The customers pick it up the exact same day they drop it off. There's no, all the neighbors around us, we took that into consideration 4 years ago when we started the business. Our hours are noon to 6, Monday through Friday. So we're not there late hours. We're not there early morning. We cater to the hours of the working class, the people who need to come in there on their lunch break to get their equipment serviced or come in after work. And then we service on Saturdays also from 10 a.m. till 4 p.m. We're not open on Sundays, no late nights. We don't, stir up anything. We're not loud. I mean, there's a shop directly across the street from us that does loud mechanical work. There's a shop right next door where our old shop, where we moved from, they do heavy mechanical work that's very loud, but it has nothing to do with us. So, we're just there to do our job. The shop's ran by me and both my sons. It's a family business. Right now, we have to take the vehicles off-site because it's not in compliant to do the installation of the equipment. So that's why I'm asking for this variance so that we can. Right now, I have to run the vehicles, either me or my sons have to run it to our Morton building at my house in Carlisle, do it, then bring it back.
Which you probably shouldn't be doing.
You probably should not, yeah, exactly. But
I'm not in Carlisle.
But yeah, it's
I get
just trying to keep, started this business so I could have something to hand off to my sons, and we just stopped moving from one. Literally, they share a property line and they share the same owner. We moved next door thinking we would be okay, And then since November, it's just been hurdle after hurdle, and we've been doing everything on our end to get the proper paperwork, anything submitted that the city has asked for. We just want to stay in the good graces of the city. It's a lot easier to do that than to have to look over your back all the time. And I'm just here to do everything by the book.
Okay.
So you're like somebody, if I went somewhere to have a stereo installed in my car.
Basic, yes, it's very low-fi.
It's in Toxalock.
Yes, and Toxalock is one of the contracts we hold, yes. Yeah.
So these guys show up, they install this.
It's a scheduled appointment, yep. They show up, we install it, we do their contract, their paperwork, we get their DOT paperwork, they pay us for the services, we show them how to use it, they leave. And we don't even have the customers wait. They drop their vehicle off with us, so we're not having customers overflowing our lobby, our area. They drop it off, we call them when it's done, so it's very minimal, the amount of traffic we have through there. We just wanted to make sure that we weren't a congested area to
So you don't have car parts, you don't have anything. The car comes in, you do your thing, call them, they come get it, and it leaves.
Absolutely.
And the fact that you're opening a door and doing something to a car, you're now being categorized as...
Correct. And that's why I wanted to speak on it, because minor automotive can mean a lot of things.
Right.
And I can, with an electronic probe in my bare hands, I can install this equipment. So, I mean, that's not a mechanical, I mean, it's a technical know-how more than anything. I'm an electrician by trade.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. Other questions for the applicant? Okay, you're good for the moment, Alan. Thank you for your presentation. Okay, so applicants presented. Is there anybody that wants to speak in support of the applicant's request? Mark, please restate your name and address, and you've got 5.
Mark Lyle, 1100 Army Post. I had no idea he was on the docket until today, so I got to support them. You know, the 2 buildings to the east of there are empty and been empty. We need anything to do. They've been good neighbors, and I'll testify, he's cleaned up the lot a lot. It's significantly different than what it was 2 months ago. And not that it was bad 2 months ago, but it's much cleaner than what it was. So that's it. I'm supportive of it.
All right, support. And yeah, sure, you can do it. Come on up. Just need your name and address. You got 5 minutes.
My name's Howard Town, and I own the property next door at 1026, and I operated the pawn shop since 2004 at 1022, or it was 1036, and then they changed it to 1022.
Right.
And Alan has done just a wonderful job. I actually think he could do what he needs to do under RX1 because he's not actually doing vehicle maintenance or repair per se, but we want this variance because, number one, it's a service for the state of Iowa. They contract in the state of Iowa. No congestion. We were willing to do anything possible per se to, and we did everything that the city asked with the property. And man, Alan gives back to the community every year at school time. He has a backpack program where he gives backpacks away to the community, all the kids, school. I mean, he wants people to have things on the south side. What we are asking for is the variance.
Yep.
And it's just to help the community and help it grow and help people be able to get back and forth to work. Like I said, it's not like he's pulling motors. He is just plugging a wire in. And I just ask you just to approve this variance.
Okay. All right. Thank you for coming in. Okay. That was 2 supports. Anybody else who speak in support? Seeing none, anybody speak in opposition? Seeing none, any neutrality comments regarding Army Post Road? All right, if none, any further questions for city staff? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public portion.
I got one.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I think
Nate.
probably for Eric
Yes.
to discuss kind of the conversation that has begun to occur about what might fall under the category of vehicle maintenance and repair versus something else.
Yes, and it's a broad category. I mean, it takes everything from vehicle washing, detailing, accessory, components, people that are just putting on chrome accessories would be considered in that category. We just had a rezoning down the street where the question of auto upholstery, and it falls into that as well. So it is a broad category. Certainly the board
It would include
would
car
have the
wash.
ability to narrow that to a very specific activity if there was concern about that, being expanded.
You're saying if we granted the variance, it could be limited to the type of kind of electronic stuff that he does?
Definitely. The same way you were entertaining the notion of just parking that trailer outside or, that type of thing. So the board would have that ability to limit the use variance to those very specific elements if they determined that it met the test for use variance.
But as you describe it, a car wash place would be under vehicle maintenance and repair.
Minor, yes.
Minor.
Yep. Detailing, auto washing, tinting is another one that is, we come across. Glass replacement.
Okay. Anything else for staff or Eric for questions? Okay. All right, seeing none, we'll close the public portion, go to board deliberation. Okay. Well, I'm going to kick us off here. I'm a Des Moines native. I've lived right off Army Post Road, only house I've ever bought in my life. Lived there for decades. I drive up and down the Army Post corridor almost every day of the week. And I can't tell you how embarrassed I am by the area between Southwest 10th and Southwest 18th. We may have good businesses there. We may have a lot of people that work hard, but it's embarrassing. The quality of the streets on the city's behalf are embarrassing. A lot of the businesses, we've got stuff that goes back 70 years for what was there. And we have so many businesses that have sat there and have never made an ounce of improvement because they were never required to, because they never changed their use. But we now have a new zoning ordinance. We're trying to lift our city and move it forward into the 21st century. The Army Post corridor was just that. It was a way to get to the Army Post that was established there in 1901. It was the old Highway 5 alignment until the bypass was built. But it's had such a jumble of uses over the years. It wasn't even annexed into the city. I don't have the date in my head, but probably the 60s before it was even annexed in. A lot of these buildings were already here. So Des Moines got what it was stuck with. And I know these guys run a great business. They run a nice business. But we have to find a way to get businesses to fit into our zoning ordinance. And especially in this corridor, I don't want to see more use allowances and use changes and use variances. That's a heavy lift. This is not zoned for this. The city council said this is not consistent with our zoning. On the nice guy and the nice business thing, sure, I'd love to say yes. But in the practicality, I can't. I can't. It just doesn't meet the variance test for me here. But I'm open to other options if people got them, or if they've got different observations with what they've seen in this corridor.
I think the city's lumped.
We're done with all public input, sir.
You didn't give him 5 minutes at the end.
Oh, well, now maybe you can get me on that. Did I not give him a 3-minute rebuttal? Well, if I didn't, then... Well, the chair is not perfect in his role. And since you've heard a couple comments already, you got one up on us. So come back up here. You got 3 minutes to close it out.
Thank you, sir. I just wanted to close this out by saying that this is, I mean, it's hard. It's a hard pill to swallow. Just knowing that this right here is the determining factor of whether I'm going to have a business when I walk out of this door. And I got to go home to my family and tell them that we don't have a business anymore because there is no properties. I have looked endlessly since November for another property just as a plan B in case this did not go through. There is no properties. My business will fail to exist. I will lose these contracts and there will probably be legal ramifications for me canceling these contracts that I have with these huge businesses to maintenance their equipment. I realize I agree with you that there's tons of buildings and businesses along Army Post Road that do not need to be there and are an eyesore. My plans for this property are over the moon, really. I reinvest in my properties. I reinvest in everything. I've stopped, actually, the exterior that we were doing because I wanted to make sure all this was going through before I dumped more money into it. It will have a completely different appearance 30 days from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, because I will continue to dump money into it to make it more appealing to somebody driving down Army Post Road. All I need is this variance. It's a small variance that I ask for. I agree. We don't need automotive shops, and that's not what I have. We're not going to have mechanics and cars and debris stuff sitting out there that's going to make you drive by and go, why is that there? That will not be my business. And that's all I have.
Okay.
Thank you.
Excellent closing. Okay. All right. So, and I appreciate you guys pointing that out. So back to board deliberation. Justin.
I just have a question maybe, and this is for legal. If indeed the board decides to deny the variance, is there some sort of a grace period that can be given, 6 months to get out or stop production of what he's doing? Or, I mean, can that be given as part of our decision today?
My understanding is there is not a grace period applicable. And in fact, that's why he's driving the vehicles to Carlisle now.
And Lisa, since you're part of us, so you're in our closed board deliberation, if we wanted to try to grant something here to allow the variance for what he exactly wants to do here, is there a way we can make that narrow enough to allow him to have it without letting the elephant in the room of any other vehicle maintenance repair minor? Because that does allow for vehicles to be parked outside for up to 3 days and vehicles outdoors waiting repair and pickup.
Yes, my understanding is from what Eric had indicated earlier as well, that we could limit the scope to just the electrical components that he is using with the existing business.
And maybe we could say no overnight storage of vehicles or something to that effect.
Which I don't think there is any now anyway.
Okay, yeah, there's a lot of head nodding in the
Per
audience.
him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think this, I understand what the city's trying to do.
Yeah.
I think their definition is way too broad, and like everything else, they give you a black or white crayon, and this requires a gray crayon. So city staff, I know you guys are doing the best you can with the tools you have, and you got a pretty light load with as far as the toolbox goes. I've just got I'm trying to draw a comparison here. We've got, a year and a half ago, we were dealing with a car repair request directly across the street from the entrance to the Des Moines International Airport.
Yeah. Yep.
And
Oh,
everybody
exactly.
was, I don't know, boy, that's the first thing they're going to see when they drive out of our fair city airport.
Yep.
That place is spotless. You can't even tell it's a body shop.
And we put conditions on it.
And there's a convenience store, something to the south of it, that makes Dollar General look like the Sears Tower. to me, when I looked
Used to
there.
look okay, but.
But no, I'm just saying, and I'm, okay, that's a little overdramatic, but it's like night and day.
Yeah.
So now we got a guy here he's not even working on cars. This is like I replaced glove compartment lights. I make an appointment because I have to have this in order to drive. And if I don't have this, I can't get insurance. And I've had a problem because I've drank and gotten caught multiple times. So I don't agree with the city's definition here. Eric said it's broad. Okay, we're not letting somebody park a trailer outside that's a half a block away, but he's got mowers and everything else inside of a garage, and he's storing car wash chemicals outside in a lot that's got barbed wire around the top of it.
Yeah.
And here we got a guy that,
Which
and
is
I know
why
they're
we
two
said
different,
no on that
they're two different things. I'm just saying this. We need to be able to read between the lines here, and there's not a perfect fit. And I think the city gets that. They can't foresee everything, and they can't allow for everything, but I think this board can. And shame on us if we can't figure out how to make this work for this guy.
How would
And
you want to, how would you want to make it figure? How would you want to try to figure?
Let's put some requirements on this that, as a board, we can be comfortable with, that, okay, it's, however you want to describe the business, electronic, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, and there's no overnight parking, there's no storage of vehicles on site, and I think this guy will do everything we ask him to do. He probably will do more. He's going to fix the building up, Mel, which I think is going to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish on this corridor, which nobody else is doing that. He's already gone, I think, further than most of the businesses along there have, that are just clipping a coupon, and they don't have to do anything because we can't make them do anything yet. Let's try and catch people doing stuff right, rather than doing stuff wrong. And this is to me like the sign ordinance where the guy's got his stuff on the outside of the window, not on the inside, and someone on city staff went around with the razor blade to figure that out, and then we have the guy come in here, and we charge him $1,500 to change it. Come on, guys, we got better things to do with our time. So I'm going to make a motion that we grant the variance, and then I'm open to anyone that wants to make a requirement that's reasonable to go along with this, to where we can let this guy go home tonight and tell his kids, let's go to work tomorrow and let's have fun. And oh, by the way, we don't have to drive these things to Carlisle anymore. Come on. So I'll get off my soapbox.
You're not on a soapbox. We're trying to figure out what the board wants to do for a decision. So if you've got a motion, but you're looking for some help to maybe shape that.
I'll just go right down this list. I'll say no vehicles can be stored outdoors. I think everyone would be happy with that. So, which I think covers number 2 as well. Vehicles waiting repair
So
or
you just
pickup
cross
will not occupy parking spaces required by employee parking. I don't think that's an issue for him right now.
Okay.
All vehicles have current tags. They got to have that. Outside storage of junk debris, he doesn't have that. All repairs shall occur within the completely enclosed building. Do you pull all these inside? Or do you do them in the lot, or?
Well, yeah, we can. That's what
Is that
that glass garage door is.
Yeah.
On the east side of the building.
Okay.
Yeah,
And I know I'm not supposed to ask you, but I'm asking you. Any reason?
He's vice chair. He can do that.
No, I'm a vice. I'm the vice.
The vice.
And then any reuse of the site shall be in accordance. I need some help with what are we going to call this business, or describe the use so that it's, and define it. Let's define it down to however tight it needs to be for everybody here to be happy with it.
Here's one thing I would suggest. If you want to grant the variance for the vehicle maintenance repair minor with the conditions you're listing, I'm hopeful we're going to get defined enough. Hey, you can't have a car overnight. It can't be in the employee spaces. Everything's got to be current. It can't be sitting there while awaiting repair or pickup. We're getting it so defined, you're going to have to basically do what they do now. They have an appointment and they pull in. So if they have an appointment and they pull in, I don't care if they want to put SS Camaro logos on the grill or do interlocks. The idea is having a bunch of vehicles sitting outside milling around is something, we got to get this corridor turned around. So if there's a way you want to work on that, I'm fine with that, but it's just, yeah, a lot of us have had enough on that. Justin?
I'll let you continue. I just have to say, just my own opinion about, I don't take the variance test very lightly. I try to stay very strict to the law and the criteria there, but this is one of those cases that, and I don't see it very often, but this is one where, with the overbroad definition, it's a unique circumstance here. It's a unique circumstance that is not by the making of the owner. And I do think if he didn't get this variance, it would ruin his business, and it would be he'd be deprived of all benefit of the use. And so I think I would be in favor of the variance with some restrictions that we're talking about. I just wanted that on the record. Thank you.
Yes,
So we're going to use these 7, except number 2 would be no long-term outdoor storage of vehicles, period.
We'll just change it to no vehicle may be stored overnight.
Okay.
Well, but in number 1, you'd be changing that no vehicles may be stored outdoors while awaiting repair, period, right? Yeah.
People come in and pay their bills with
Yeah,
it.
we're going to have to be very clear on what language we want so that both our board attorney and staff can put this in the form of a decision and order, so be as clear as possible. So I'm asking you to tune it in here. I'm making you work.
Bills, I mean, they're going to get out of their car, they're going to walk in. And how is this different from an interstate battery store where I go in and buy a battery for my watch, or I buy a battery for my car?
Just so no overnight storage of a vehicle. How would that be?
Fine, I'm good with that.
Yeah.
Yep. But if someone has to park to go in to pay a bill to come out.
That would not be considered storage.
No, I know,
Right,
but,
right.
I mean, there was talk about, okay, but people have to come here to park, yeah.
So if we got rid of 1 and 2 and just replaced it with no overnight storage of a vehicle,
Okay.
3 would remain,
Mhm.
4 would remain, 5 would remain, 6 would remain.
Right.
Now, we have the word repairs. I wouldn't call this a repairs.
Installations.
All repairs, installations, or services
Installation.
shall only occur within a completely enclosed building.
Okay.
We want to mention interlock devices.
I don't see a need for that.
Okay.
I just don't.
That's one of his contracts.
Yeah,
There's
I think we're starting to get way too specific, because again, if somebody just wants to install SS logos on non-original SS Camaros by pulling them in a building and putting that on there, as long as they didn't violate these terms, frankly, I don't care if you run an interlock business. That's not what this is about. This is about how it fits in with the corridor and the zoning.
Right.
That's what we have to keep in mind here. This isn't about their good public service. I get it. I fully get that part. But that's not how we can base a decision.
Mel, can you repeat what you intended
Aha,
for
see?
6?
So now I'm dialing it in. So. Okay.
Repairs?
Number 6,
On number 6.
all installation.
All
and
repairs,
maintenance.
installation, or services shall only occur within a completely enclosed building. But again, I haven't seconded anybody's motion here. I'm just trying to shape some language. And then 7.
So we can second now.
What I would do is, since I listed all those, I'm going to say, as long as Dave, if that's, would be consistent with your original motion, I will second the motion with those additional conditions.
And if anyone on the board has anything else
Yes.
that they want to add, I'm all ears.
Yes. Yeah,
This isn't about me, this is about
right.
a
You
guy
don't have to
that's
tell us
trying
how you're going to vote, but if there's anything else in shaping this motion,
that'll make anyone feel better.
right.
I just wonder if you want to narrow services down at all.
It's all inside, who cares?
That's what
Interior,
I was getting to.
okay.
That's what I was getting
Yeah.
to.
Yeah, I mean, we're not even going to see what he's doing.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, because maybe they're just going to screw on a Hearst floor shifter. I don't
There you go.
care.
Yeah.
I love talking about cars. We can do that all day long.
I'm fine with that, Mel, I appreciate that. And if we need to, are you good with the description of the business?
Well, again, it is just a vehicle maintenance repair minor. It'd be a variance to allow a vehicle maintenance repair minor with these conditions. We're not
Okay.
talking about his business.
Okay, I just want to make sure
Yeah.
we describe everything right. Right, no, I'm fine with that. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to grant a variance subject to those conditions, if that's clear enough for the record. All those in favor, raise your right hand and say aye. I made the motion, so I got to put my hand up. Oh, the second was me. The motion was Dave, the second was me. All those in favor? Yeah, that's 7. See what happens when I go out of order in my comments? But really, so even with that approval, yeah, you're going to make an improvement here, but we have to continue to make improvements to our corridors in the city. We just have to. All right, thank you for waiting today. Keep up the good work. I hope I don't need your business. But if those that do, I know where to recommend them now. Yeah. Okay. Rhonda, I told you I'd make you earn your keep. So we had elections last month. That's part of the minutes. And you were elected to your, what, 4th term, 5th term, something more, as vice chair. Anybody who was here last month, if you saw any concerns with the minutes, please note. If there's no corrections for the minutes, anybody who was here last month can make a motion and vote to accept the minutes. I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Marla seconds. All those in favor who were here last month? All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You got the 5 of us? Yeah, we're missing. Okay. All right, any other business from staff's perspective? No other business, Frank?
Minutes.
We just approved minutes. Anything
Sorry,
else?
Okay, no other
Okay,
business?
all right, this hearing is adjourned. Okay.